On the day of the grand flower market, I took off my ornate clothes and shut myself inside. Father, mother, I do not enjoy crowds, I will not go. In my previous life, I had insisted on going out that day. I wasted 10 years of my youth on him, only to lose everything in the end. This time I would not go. Miss, wake up. The flower market is about to open. Qingdai's clear voice sounded beside my ear. When I died, I had been lying in the ruins of a burned house. Flames had torn through the curtains, and smoke had filled my lungs. I knelt on the cold brick floor and pounded desperately on the locked door. Outside, Gu Huaichuan's voice had remained as gentle as ever. Tengning, do not blame me. The Shen family has already fallen. If you remain alive, you will only drag more people down with you. Through the door, I heard his new wife laugh and ask, Husband, she followed you for 10 years. Are you truly not going to save her? After a moment of silence, Gu Huaichuan sighed softly. A childless, repudiated wife tied to convicted officials. What would be the point of saving her? The flames crashed through the roof beams. The last things I saw were my mother's pale face before her death, my father being led out of the Shen residence in shackles, my wounded elder brother being driven from the capital and looking back at me, and the divorce letter Gu Huaichuan had placed before me. 10 years as husband and wife. From beginning to end, it had all been a carefully designed scheme. Someone gently shook my shoulder. I opened my eyes with a start. My chest rose and fell violently, and my fingers clutched the soft quilt beneath me. There was no fire, no smoke. Bright sunlight streamed through the window. Freshly cut spring-themed paper decorations were pasted onto the carved window lattice. Half a bowl of almond custard sat on the low table, and 2 budding crabapple branches stood in a celadon vase. Qingdai stood beside the bed, holding a crabapple red brocade spring jacket. Her round cheeks were flushed with the vitality of youth. Did you have a nightmare, miss? I stared at her, my throat tightening. In my previous life, Qingdai had tried to send a letter asking for help on my behalf. The Gu family's steward had broken her legs and thrown her into a mass grave outside the city. Yet now she stood before me, alive and well. The silver butterfly hairpin I had given her the day before still rested at her temple. I reached out and touched her cheek. It was warm. Qingdai froze, then smiled. What is wrong with you today, miss? Could it be that you were so excited about the flower market that you could not sleep? The flower market? I turned sharply toward the window. Gongs and drums sounded in the distance, mixed with the faint calls of vendors and the jingling of horse bells. Every year on the 3rd day of the 3rd lunar month, the capital held a grand flower market. Princes and nobles, women from prominent families, and scholars all gathered there. The streets overflowed with rare flowers and plants. 10 years ago, on this very day, I had worn that crabapple red jacket and taken the Shen family carriage to the market. Halfway there, the horses suddenly panicked. The driver fell. The reins slipped loose, and the carriage hurtled toward a stone bridge. Amid everyone's screams, Gu Huaichuan rushed from the crowd, climbed onto the speeding carriage, cut the harness, and carried me from the overturned compartment. At the time, he had been merely a poor scholar who had come to the capital for the imperial examination. His clothes had been washed nearly white, and the broken carriage frame had left a deep wound on his arm that reached the bone. Yet while I trembled in shock, he comforted me gently. Do not be afraid, miss, you are safe now. I had believed it was fate. To repay him, I asked my father to introduce him to famous teachers. To help him pass the examination, I used the dowry my mother had prepared for me. To marry him, I knelt before my parents for the first time and begged for their consent. Later, he climbed to power over the ruins of the Shen family. Only before my death did I learn that a drug had been mixed into the horse's feed. The driver had already taken Gu Huaichuan's silver. His supposed selfless rescue had been nothing more than a ladder he had built for himself. What day is it today? I asked. Qingdai looked confused. The 3rd day of the 3rd month. Have you not been waiting half a month to see the potted green peony brought from Lingnan? The 3rd day of the 3rd month. I had truly returned. I was 17 again, back before that false marriage had even begun. Qingdai held the spring jacket against me. Madam said this color makes your complexion look especially lovely. The carriage is ready, and Miss Rulin from the 2nd branch is waiting in the front hall. I stared at the painfully bright red fabric. The fire in the Gu family's cold courtyard seemed to blaze before my eyes once more. I shoved the jacket away. I am not going. Qingdai blinked. What? Put it away. I threw back the quilt and stepped barefoot onto the carpet. I will not go to the flower market today. But yesterday you Qingdai. I took her hand. My voice was quiet, but there was no hesitation in it. From today onward, no one will decide for me where I must go after I have said no. She studied me for a moment. Though she did not understand, she nodded firmly. I will obey you, miss. I changed into a plain blue-green robe and went personally to Songha Hall, where my parents lived. My father, Shen Tingzhang, sat by the table drinking tea. My mother, Liu Minggui, was adjusting the jade clasp on his official robe. My elder brother, Shen Yanshu, stood nearby holding a policy essay, while father criticized him for writing too sharply. When mother saw me, she smiled and beckoned. Ninger, you are here. The carriage is waiting. Your maternal uncle's daughter will also be at the flower market. Young people rarely get such a lively outing. Do not stay shut inside. I looked at them and my eyes suddenly burned. Father was not wearing shackles. Mother's hair had not turned white from illness. My brother had not been expelled from the capital. They were all alive, sitting safely before me. I walked over, knelt beside mother's knees and pressed my face into her palm. She was startled. What happened? I had a nightmare last night. Holding back my tears, I raised my head. Father, mother, I do not want to see the flowers today. Father frowned. Are you unwell? No, I simply do not like crowds. Mother touched my forehead. Finding no fever, she said gently. Then do not go. There is a flower market every year. You can see it next year. In my previous life, when I insisted on marrying Gu Huaichuan, father had refused to speak to me for 3 full months. Mother had cried in secret countless times, yet she had still packed my dowry for me. At the time, I thought they despised Gu Huaichuan because he came from a poor family. Only now did I understand that they had seen the danger I refused to see. Father set down his teacup. His tone remained stern. Since you are not going, stay home and study properly. Do not suddenly run to the rear garden and make trouble among the flowers again. My nose stung, but I smiled. Yes, father. As I left Songhe Hall, Shen Roland entered the courtyard in a peach-colored skirt. She was the legitimate daughter of my second uncle, half a year younger than me, with bright features and a lively temperament. In my previous life, she had married the second son of a provincial prefect. Her life had not been extraordinarily wealthy, but it had been peaceful. Seeing my plain clothes, she asked in surprise, "Elder sister, are you not going? I have a headache." She could not hide her disappointment. "I was hoping to ride with you. I heard there is a rare cherry tree at the market that blooms in 2 colors. If we arrive late, we may not see it." I looked at her and suddenly remembered the route my carriage had taken in my previous life. If I did not go, would Gu Huaichuan still arrange the frightened horses? If his only target was a legitimate young lady of the Shen family, then Shen Rulan, who would be riding in a Shen carriage today. My heart sank. Rulan. She had already turned away, but looked back when she heard me. "Do not take my carriage today." She blinked. Why? I could not tell her about my previous life. I could only say, I heard the horses seemed restless when the driver reported earlier. Take the second branch's own carriage and travel slowly. Rulan laughed. "Elder sister, you worry too much. The Shen family carriages are inspected every month. What could happen?" She took my arm and coaxed me. "You may stay home, but you cannot stop me. Chu Yu is waiting outside." I looked at the maid behind her. "Have your own driver harness your carriage. Do not use the one prepared by the main household." Chu Yu quickly agreed. Though Rulan found me strange, she did not argue further. I watched her leave, then immediately ordered Qingdai to find Steward Zhou. "Find out who prepared my carriage today, and check whether anything is wrong with the feed." Qingdai's expression tightened. "Do you suspect someone intends to harm you? Do not alert anyone yet." I wrote down the name of the driver from my previous life. "Investigate Chen Fu first." Qingdai took the paper and hurried away. I did not return to my room. The hatred pent up in my chest made it impossible to sit still, so I went alone to the rear garden. Mother came from a family of flower merchants in Jiangnan, and one of her dowry properties was Chunxing Nursery. For that reason, many rare plants grew in the Shen residence's rear garden. The March sunlight was warm, and flower fragrance drifted through the air. I followed a stone path to an abandoned greenhouse in the most remote corner. Mother had once used it to cultivate rare orchids, but after the roof began leaking, it had been left unused. Weeds choked the entrance. The copper lock hung crookedly at one side. I stopped. There was blood on the lock. Only a little, as though someone had brushed against it while passing in haste. In my previous life, besides the incident with my carriage, another event had shocked the capital that day. Pei Jiming, heir to Duke Dingguo, had been attacked at the flower market. He survived, but delayed treatment damaged one of his legs, forcing him to walk with a cane. 2 years later, his position as heir was taken by his half-brother. 4 years after that, he died in a fire at Duke Dingguo's residence. After Gu Huaichuan rose in rank, he once remarked casually while drunk, "Pei Jiming was simply unlucky." If he had not gone to the flower market that year, perhaps he would not have ended that way. I stared at the blood on the greenhouse door and slowly pushed it open. The old wood creaked. Inside, the light was dim, flower stands lay overturned, and the air smelled of damp soil. The moment I stepped inside, a blood-stained hand reached from the shadows and seized my wrist. A cold blade pressed against my neck. "Do not make a sound." The man's voice was low and hoarse. His breathing was weak, but the hand holding the weapon did not tremble. I did not struggle. Through the gloom, I saw that he wore a dark embroidered robe. A deep wound crossed his shoulder and back, and blood dripped to the floor, spreading into a dark red stain. His face was pale, his features sharp and stern. At his waist hung a dark iron token stained with blood, engraved with the character Pei. It really was him. Pei Jiming, the heir to Duke Dingguo, who should have been gravely injured at the flower market. "How many people are outside?" I asked. His gaze turned icy, and the blade moved closer. "You know someone is pursuing me? The blood trail runs from the rear wall all the way here," I said. "If you were alone, why would you hide inside someone else's inner residence?" He watched me as though judging whether I could be trusted. I lowered my gaze to his wound. The blood had darkened, while the skin around it was unnaturally red. The blade was poisoned. "If you do not stop the bleeding soon, your pursuers will not need to enter. You will not last another 2 hours. You understand medicine?" "No." In my previous life, Gu Huaichuan had once suffered a similar blade wound while traveling to take up an official post. I stayed beside him for 7 days and nights, and remembered how the physician treated it. Looking back now, even that supposed ambush may have been another performance meant to draw money and connections from me. I took a breath and pushed the memory aside. But I know the wound must be cleaned before the bleeding can be stopped. "If you do not trust me, my lord, you may kill me now. But if I die, you will not leave the Shen residence alive either." Pei Jiming's gaze sharpened. "You recognize me? The token at your waist bears the character Pei. Would an ordinary sheltered young lady recognize Duke Dingguo's dark iron command token?" I did not answer. Suddenly, hurried footsteps sounded outside. Someone had climbed over the rear wall and snapped a dead branch. Pei Jiming swayed, but he did not lower the knife. I looked toward the corner of the greenhouse. Beneath an old flower rack lay a wooden panel. Under it was a cellar once used to store seeds. I had hidden there while playing as a child. "Let go," I whispered. "I will hide you." He did not move. "You have no time to doubt me." The footsteps drew closer. I caught his wrist and pushed the blade away from my neck. "If you want to live, follow me." Perhaps he had lost too much blood. Perhaps the urgency in my eyes convinced him. At last his grip loosened. I helped him behind the flower rack and down into the narrow cellar. His tall frame nearly blocked the entrance. Before closing the wooden panel, I tore a strip from my skirt and pressed it against his wound. He looked up at me. "What? You still have not told me who you are." I lowered the panel halfway. "Shen Tangning, eldest daughter of the Shen family." He seemed to repeat my name silently. The next moment, a rough voice called from outside the greenhouse. "Is anyone inside?" I rose, hid the blood-stained cloth inside my sleeve, and faced the door. It was thrown open. 3 men dressed as constables rushed in. The leader cupped his hands toward me, though his eyes swept the room. "Miss Shen, the capital prefecture is pursuing a wounded thief. Someone saw him climb into the Shen residence." "Have you seen him?" I glanced at their black-soled boots. Officers of the capital prefecture wore pale gray official boots in spring, marked with white stitching along the sides. These 3 had no such insignia. I smiled. "You are officers of the capital prefecture?" "That is correct." "Then this is easily settled." I stepped forward and deliberately raised my voice. "The flower market has drawn a great crowd today, so the capital prefecture's officers are patrolling the southern market. Since you were ordered to capture a criminal, why do you carry no badges? Why did you enter the Shen family's inner residence over the wall without reporting at the main gate?" Their expressions changed. The leader forced himself to say, "The situation is urgent. Please do not obstruct official business." Of course I would never obstruct it. I turned toward the courtyard. "Someone, bring my father here. Then invite the prefect himself. Tell him 3 of his officers climbed into the Shen residence and demanded to search my greenhouse. Ask him to come identify his men." Murderous intent flashed in the man's eyes. I did not retreat. This was the inner residence of the Shen household. If I delayed them for only a moment, our guards would arrive. Sure enough, Steward Zhou's voice soon sounded outside. "Miss..." More than a dozen household guards rushed into the courtyard. The 3 men exchanged a glance. Rather than continue arguing, they smashed through a window and escaped over the wall. Steward Zhou started after them, but I stopped him. "Do not pursue them. Seal the rear garden first." I watched the men disappear. My nails had left deep marks in my palm. After everyone withdrew to the courtyard, I reopened the cellar. Pei Jiming sat against the wall with his eyes closed. I checked his breathing. He was still alive, but his forehead was burning hot. When I bent down to help him, his eyes opened suddenly and he caught my hand. Why did you save me? Because you were not supposed to die here. How do you know I would die today? I stopped. Pei Jiming stared at me. Though his gaze was unfocused, it remained sharp enough to expose any lie. I did not explain. If you want an answer, survive first and ask later. He seemed about to speak, but his strength failed. He collapsed against my shoulder. The metallic smell of blood surrounded me. In my previous life, I met Gu Huaichuan at the flower market. This time, in an abandoned greenhouse of my own home, I caught a man who should have fallen into an abyss. I did not yet know where the hand I extended to him would lead either of us. But I knew that from this day forward, the road fixed by my previous life had already broken apart. Pei Jiming's injury was worse than I expected. The cut ran diagonally from his left shoulder across his back. It had missed anything immediately fatal, but he had lost too much blood, and poison coated the blade. The blood around the wound had turned dark purple, and even a light touch made his muscles tense. I could not call the physician normally used by the Shen family. The heir to Duke Dingguo had disappeared, and whoever was hunting him would certainly be watching the capital's clinics. If the Shen residents suddenly summoned a physician for a poisoned blade wound, it would announce where Pei Jiming was hiding. I sent Qingdai to 3 separate medicine shops: buy wound medicine on East Street, fever medicine on West Street, and herbs used against aconite poisoning in the north of the city. At each shop, say mother's old illness has returned. Do not let anyone realize the medicines are for one person. Qingdai looked at the man in the cellar, her face pale. Miss, is he truly the heir to Duke Dingguo? The token is genuine. But if the people pursuing him find him here, that is why only you and I can know. I held her hand. Qingdai, are you afraid? She bit her lip, then nodded honestly. I am. But if you wish to save him, I will help you save him. She had been the same in my previous life. Even while trembling with fear, she broke into the Gu family's secret prison again and again for my sake. My throat tightened. I placed a silver ingot in her hand. Go. Be careful on the road. After Qingdai left, I found an old copper basin in the greenhouse, boiled water, and began cleaning the wound. Pei Jiming drifted in and out of consciousness, but he never released the short knife in his hand. When I used scissors to cut the fabric around his shoulder, he opened his eyes abruptly. What are you doing? Cleaning your wound. Did Miss Shen not say she knew no medicine? Stopping the bleeding is still easier than watching you die. I wrung out a cloth in hot water and pressed it carefully against the injury. His brows drew together, but he made no sound. This will hurt, I warned. It already does. Then endure it. He gave me a strange look, evidently surprised that a sheltered young lady would speak to him in such a manner. I ignored him. When I cared for Gu Huaichuan in my previous life, I was always afraid he would suffer. Before changing a bandage, I would coax him gently for a long time. If he frowned even once, I blamed myself and could not sleep. Only later did I understand. Someone who truly cares about you will not use your concern as a leash. Pain is pain. If one wants to live, one can only bear it. After cleaning the wound, I crushed the herbs I had prepared and applied them. Pei Jiming watched my hands the entire time. You are practiced, he said. Whom did you care for before? My fingers paused. Someone not worth mentioning. He did not ask again. When Qingdai returned, sweat covered her forehead. Miss, I bought everything. But something else happened. She glanced at Pei Jiming and leaned close to my ear. There was an accident at the flower market. My heart sank. Whose carriage? Miss Rulin's. She was in the second branch's carriage near the stone bridge when a cart carrying flowers suddenly crossed in front of it. The horse panicked and nearly rushed off the bridge. Fortunately, a young man ran from the crowd and caught the reins. I closed my eyes. Even though I had not taken that carriage, the staged accident still occurred. What was the man's name? Gu Huaichuan. He is a poor scholar in the capital for the examination. Since Miss Rulin returned to the second branch, she has done nothing but praise his bravery. Second Madam has already sent him silver and tonics. In my previous life, Gu Huaichuan had cut the harness to rescue me and badly injured his arm. This time, Shen Rulin had used a different carriage, and the loss of control was clearly less severe. He only needed to seize the reins to complete the same performance of a hero saving a beauty. That meant his plan had never depended on one specific carriage. His true target was whichever unmarried Shen daughter went out that day. I picked up the pestle and continued grinding the medicine. What about the driver? Steward Zhou investigated. The man originally assigned to your carriage was indeed Chen Fu. When he heard you were not going, he claimed his stomach hurt and returned to the servants' quarters. But when I went to look, he was gone. Tell Steward Zhou not to search for him and not to report him to the authorities. Qingdai stared at me. Why? Will he return? He took silver but failed to finish his task. If Gu Huaichuan is cautious, he will send Chen Fu back to remain inside the Shen household and observe my response. Rather than seize him immediately, we should leave this threat in place and see who receives his messages. I carried the finished medicine to Pei Jiming. He leaned against a flower rack. His face was paler than before, but his eyes were clearer. "What happened at the flower market?" he asked. "Someone frightened a Shen family carriage. My cousin was inside. You were originally going as well." "Yes, so that is why you suddenly stayed home." I looked at him. "You seem very fond of interrogating the person who saved your life. Professional habit. This is not the court of judicial review." He coughed softly. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "Miss Shen knows far more than an ordinary young lady." If I did not ask, would I not waste all the effort you put into hiding it? I held the bowl out to him. "If you suspect poison, you need not drink it." He did not take it. "Taste it first. I treated your wound, hid you from your pursuers, and bought medicine for you. And now you want me to test the medicine for poison too?" I finished. "If you save someone, save him to the end." I laughed in exasperation. "Then you may die here by yourself, my lord." I set the bowl beside him and turned away. After a brief silence, I heard the porcelain bowl knock lightly against the wooden rack. When I looked back, he was drinking. His injured arm trembled so badly that the bowl shook in his hand. I walked over and supported its base. Pei Jiming did not refuse. He lowered his head. His lashes cast shadows over his pale face. At such close range, I noticed a faint old scar at the end of his right brow, likely left from childhood. In my previous life, I had seen him only once from a distance. By then he already walked with a cane and stood alone in a corner at a palace banquet. His posture was still straight, but his face showed no emotion. People whispered behind him that Duke Dingguo's crippled heir had become strange, cold, and impossible to approach. Thinking of it now, how could a man remain warm and trusting after being attacked at the flower market by people sent by his own family and losing everything because of it? Halfway through the medicine, he suddenly asked, "What time is it?" "Around 1:45 in the afternoon. How long have I been missing?" "Roughly 4 hours." Pei Jiming put down the bowl. "I must leave. If you go out now, you will collapse before you reach half a street. If I stay, I will only endanger the Shen family." I looked at him. He clearly distrusted me, yet he still refused to leave danger inside my home. In that alone, he was entirely different from Gu Huaichuan. Whenever Gu Huaichuan faced trouble, his first thought had always been how to use the Shen family to escape it. "Leave tonight," I said. A narrow alley runs outside the west wall of the rear garden. The guards change shifts then, and your pursuers will be less vigilant. I will have a flower cart waiting. He was silent for a moment. "You do not ask who wants me dead? Would you tell me if I asked?" "No." "Then there is no reason to waste words." I had just gathered the empty bowl when Shen Rulan's voice sounded outside. "Elder sister, are you in there?" I immediately closed the cellar panel. Rulan pushed open the greenhouse door. Her face was still somewhat pale, but excitement shone in her eyes. "Elder sister, you really are here." I stood in front of the flower rack. "Were you injured?" "Only a scrape on my wrist." She held out her hand, wrapped in white gauze. The injury was minor. I was terrified. The horse suddenly went wild. If young Master Gu had not appeared, I might have. At the mention of Gu Huaichuan, her cheeks reddened. Looking at her, I seemed to see my 17-year-old self, equally ready to believe in coincidence, equally willing to mistake a carefully staged danger for a bond granted by heaven. "Rulan, did you see who frightened the horse?" The street was too chaotic. Gu Huaichuan appeared just in time. Her smile faded. "What do you mean, elder sister? I am only asking." "Young Master Gu risked himself to save me." The rain scraped his palms raw. "You did not even see it. How can you suspect him like this?" I did not argue. Whatever I said now, she would hear it as an attack on the man who had saved her life. I had responded the same way when my parents tried to warn me in my previous life. When a person desperately wants to believe something, the truth sounds like malice. "Has second aunt had the horse examined?" "Yes. They said the market's gongs and drums startled it." "Then that is good." I handed her a small bottle of salve. "Keep the wound dry for the next few days." Rulan accepted it and her expression softened. Young Master Gu refused the second branch's silver. He said saving someone was only his duty. Mother wants to invite him to the residence in a few days to thank him. You should come meet him too." "No." "Why?" "I do not like owing favors to strangers." She gave a small huff. "He did not save you." With that, she turned and left. After the door closed, I stood still for a long moment. The cellar panel lifted gently from below. Pei Jiming looked up at me. "That young Master Gu is the reason you avoided the flower market today." "No, you are afraid of him." My fingers tightened. "I am not." Your breathing changed when his name was spoken. People from the Court of Judicial Review truly knew how to corner someone with the smallest detail. I answered coldly, "You should conserve your strength and recover." Pei Jiming did not press me further. Around midnight, I had Qingdai stop a cart loaded with dead branches outside the rear garden. Pei Jiming could barely stand. I handed him a gray cloak. "After you leave the alley, go east. At the third intersection is a secondary residence belonging to Duke Dingguo's household. If your people are still trustworthy, they can meet you there." He took the cloak and looked at me. "You know where Duke Dingguo's secondary residence is? My mother's nursery once delivered orchids there. You knew the poison in my wound was aconite. The nursery has cultivated medicinal flowers. You also knew I would be in danger today. You never said so, but when you saw me, you were not surprised." I remained silent. Pei Jiming stepped closer. His injury made him unsteady. "Shen Tangning." It was the first time he had spoken my full name. "Have we met before? No. But the way you look at me," his voice lowered, "it is as if you are looking at someone who has already died once." My heart jolted. 2 faint bird calls suddenly sounded outside. Pei Jiming's expression eased. "My people." He put on the cloak. Before turning away, he placed a small black bronze fastener on the flower rack. "If you face an emergency, send this to the Court of Judicial Review." I did not reach for it. "I did not save you for repayment." "I know." He looked at me. "That is why this is not repayment. What is it?" "Proof that the man you saved is alive and that he will return." Then he climbed over the rear wall and disappeared into the night. I closed my hand around the bronze fastener. It still held the warmth of his palm. I did not sleep that night. Near dawn, Qingdai hurried into my room. "Miss, Chen Fu has returned." "Where did he go?" "He claims his stomach hurt, and he went out to buy medicine." But Steward Zhou's men saw him leave through the back door of Jingchun Trading House in the southern district of the capital. Jingchun Trading House. In my previous life, after Gu Huaichuan took control of Chunqing Nursery, Jingchun Trading House became its largest business partner. The shipment of tribute flowers that later caused my father's downfall had also been transported by that firm. I slowly tightened my fingers around the bronze fastener. Gu Huaichuan's staged rescue. The attempt on Pei Jiming's life at the flower market, a Shen family driver. Jingchun Trading House. In my previous life, I had seen only one fateful meeting. Now that I had taken a step back, I realized every road through the flower market seemed to lead into the same trap. 3 days later, the heir to Duke Dingguo came to visit. When his card reached Song Hall, father was in the study testing my brother's lessons. Mother read the card twice and still looked puzzled. "Duke Dingguo's household wants to buy orchids from us." The steward bowed. Lord Pei came personally. He said the old madam has not been sleeping well. He heard that pure heart orchids can calm the spirit and wishes to choose 2 pots. Father frowned. The nursery steward can handle a flower purchase. Why would the heir come himself? I stood beside mother without speaking. Pei Jiming had come sooner than I expected. When he left 3 days ago, he was badly injured. If he could appear personally today, at least some people in Duke Dingguo's household remained loyal to him. Mother took me to receive him in the flower hall. Pei Jiming wore a moon-white brocade robe. No injury showed at his shoulder, though his complexion was still paler than normal. Only one attendant followed him, a man named Qingqing carrying a red sandalwood box. Had I not treated his wound myself, it would have been difficult to connect the reserved nobleman before me with the bloodied man in the abandoned greenhouse. He bowed to mother. "Forgive my unannounced visit, Madam Shen." Mother smiled. "My lord, you are too courteous. If the old madam of Duke Dingguo's household likes our orchids, it is an honor for the nursery." Pei Jiming looked at me. "Does Miss Shen also understand flowers?" "A little. I heard the Shen rear garden has a silver-edged pure heart orchid cultivated for many years. May I see it?" He clearly had not come merely to buy flowers. I led him into the rear garden. Mother had intended to accompany us, but a steward arrived with household business, so Qingdai and Cheng's followed instead. Near the abandoned greenhouse, Pei Jiming stopped. I had washed the blood from the wall and spread fresh soil across the ground. "The orchid you wish to see is ahead," I reminded him. "Miss Shen cleaned this place thoroughly," he said so quietly, only I could hear. If I had not been here myself, I would never know someone had hidden here. "Did you come to appreciate flowers or investigate a case?" "Both." I looked at him. He did not avoid my gaze. "The men who pursued me 3 days ago wore the clothing of capital prefecture officers. They followed me directly to the Shen family's rear garden. Which means someone knew my intended escape route beforehand." "Do you suspect the Shen family?" "I suspect everyone who could be involved." His honesty reassured me more than a show of trust would have. "What have you discovered?" The drugging incense used by the assassins contained night-blooming jasmine pollen. Only 3 merchants in the capital recently purchased large quantities of that flour. One is Jingchun Trading House. He watched me. You found something as well. Our driver, Chen Fu, went to Jingchun Trading House on the day of the flour market. I handed him Qingdai's record of the times Chen Fu entered and left. Pei Jiming accepted it without immediately opening it. Why tell me? Because you are investigating the people who attacked you, while I am investigating the frightened horses. Both matters lead to Jingchun Trading House. Rather than work separately, we should cooperate. What does Miss Shen want? To learn why Gu Huaichuan is approaching the Shen family, and who inside our residence is passing information to him. Only that? What else do you think I should demand? A life-saving debt can purchase many things. I smiled. If kindness can be priced, it is no longer kindness. Pei Jiming regarded me silently. A breeze passed through the resort garden, and a crabapple petal drifted from a branch and settled on his shoulder. He did not notice. Are you not afraid I may discover that the Shen family is not clean either? If someone in the Shen family has done wrong, exposing them is better than leaving them hidden. Even if it is one of your relatives? Family ties are no excuse for concealing wrongdoing. Something shifted in his eyes. Very well, he agreed. I will investigate Gu Huaichuan and Jingchun Trading House for you. In return, look into anything unusual at the Shen family nursery over the past 6 months. Why the nursery? The drugging incense used by the assassins, the poison coating their blades, and Jingchun Trading House are all connected to flowers. After speaking, he handed me the red sandalwood box Chongqing had been carrying. Inside was a dark iron token, smaller than the one he had worn at his waist, but engraved with the same Pei family crest. What is this for? If you encounter danger, this token will admit you to the Court of Judicial Review. It can also summon 6 guards from Duke Dingguo's household. I closed the box and pushed it back. You still do not trust me, yet you hand me a command token. Are you not afraid I might use it to kill someone? I do not trust the secrets behind your actions, he said without taking back his hand. But I trust that when you chose to save someone, you did not hesitate. For a moment, I could not speak. During 10 years of marriage, Gu Huaichuan had never truly trusted me. He used my dowry but feared I would examine the accounts. He borrowed my father's connections but guarded himself against Shen family influence. Whenever he met his colleagues, he made me stay away, as if I might ruin his career at any moment. I once believed trust between husband and wife had to be purchased through endless sacrifice. Pei Jiming had known me for only 3 days. He did not trust the mystery of my past, but he trusted the choice I made in a crisis. His trust was incomplete, yet it was clean. At last I accepted the box. I will keep it safely. It is not meant to sit on an altar. I will not use it lightly. Nor should you be so stubborn that you refuse to use it even at the cost of your life. His tone remained cool, but I heard a trace of concern beneath it. In the distance, Qingdai cleared her throat. Only then did I realize Pei Jiming and I had been standing together for too long. He selected 2 pots of pure heart orchids and offered far more silver than their market value. Mother refused to accept the excess, so he said, half is payment for the flowers. The other half is to ask Miss Shen to instruct our gardeners in their care. Mother looked at me with amusement. Since when did my daughter become so skilled? I answered calmly. I read several flower manuals recently. Pei Jiming glanced at me but did not expose the excuse. After he left, I immediately went to the servants' quarters. Chen Fu had returned to work. When he saw me, he lowered his head and bowed. Miss, I am going to visit my maternal grandparents' home in the western district of the capital this afternoon, I said deliberately. Mother wants me to take the green canopied carriage. Prepare it. Chen Fu agreed repeatedly. I added, do not tell Rulin. I want to surprise my aunt. 1 hour later, I put on a cloak, slipped out through a side gate, and hid in a tea house across the street. Qingdai sat at the window watching the Shen residence's rear entrance. Within 15 minutes, Chen Fu hurried out and turned into an alley. Steward Zhou's men followed him. The report returned that evening. Chen Fu had not gone to Jingchun Trading House. He went to a bookshop in the eastern district of the capital and slipped a note between the pages of an old book. The man who collected it was Zhao Quan, manager of Chunxing Nursery Mother's most trusted dowry steward. I remembered Zhao Quan from my previous life. After I married, he resigned, claiming age and poor health. When Gu Huaichuan later took over Chunxing Nursery, he lamented that Zhao Quan had served loyally for many years and should not face a miserable old age, then gave him 300 taels of silver for retirement. Now it seemed that money might not have been a pension, but payment for silence. I did not arrest anyone immediately. The next day, I had Steward Zhou secretly replace the note Chen Fu was meant to send. It read, The young lady will leave for the Western District around noon tomorrow in the green canopied carriage. Then I posted men along the only road west. As expected, 2 unfamiliar men appeared ahead of time and waited beside a roadside tea shelter. They remained there for 2 hours. When no carriage arrived, they eventually went to the rear alley of Jingchun Trading House. The witnesses, route and method of communication were now all confirmed. I had Chen Fu brought to the abandoned greenhouse. At first he cried that he was innocent. "Miss, I only went out to buy medicine. I would never betray my master." I threw the substituted note before him. "You did not betray the Shen family. You merely reported my movements to Zhao Quan." Chen Fu's face went deathly pale. "Miss, spare me." He dropped to his knees and knocked his head against the floor. "I only owed gambling debts. Manager Zhao said he would pay them if I told him when you left the residence." I truly did not know what they intended. "Who changed the horse's feed on the day of the flower market?" "It was not me. If you lie again, I will send you to the capital prefecture." Causing a horse to panic and injure someone is enough to earn exile. Chen Fu trembled all over. Manager Zhao gave me a packet of powder and ordered me to mix it into the feed. He said it would only make the horse restless, not harm you. He said someone would naturally be there to save you. "Who?" "Young Master Gu." I closed my eyes. Though I already knew the answer, hearing it aloud still felt as though a blunt knife were cutting into my chest. I had treasured that first meeting for 10 years. Gu Huaichuan said heaven had pitied his lonely years of study and sent me to him. But from the beginning, he knew my family name, my clothes, my route, and even which carriage I would take. He had not rushed from the crowd by chance. He had merely stood in the place arranged beforehand and waited for me to fall into his arms. Why did Zhao Quan help him? I truly do not know. Manager Zhao only said young Master Gu would achieve great things, and that if you married him, it would also benefit the Shen family. What else did he ask you to do? Find out which flowers you liked, what books you read, and where you went most often. His voice grew quieter. I suddenly found it almost laughable. The first time Gu Huaichuan gave me crabapple blossoms, he said he had seen them by chance and thought they suited me. At a poetry gathering, he discussed the zhuangzi with me and claimed he had never imagined a woman could share his tastes so perfectly. All those moments of apparent understanding that made my heart race had been pieced together from information gathered from servants. I had Chen Fu locked in the woodshed without alerting Zhao Tuan. That evening, a clerk sent by Pei Jiming delivered a confidential letter. Gu Huaichuan had been in the capital for less than 2 months, yet he had already met the shopkeeper of Jingchun Trading House 5 times. The true owner behind Jingchun Trading House was a nephew of Madame Liu, Duke Dingguo's second wife. At the bottom of the page was another line. The nursery accounts managed by Zhao Chuan during the past 3 years may have been falsified. I gripped the letter and looked toward Mother's courtyard. Chunxing Nursery was part of her dowry. If Zhao Chuan had long since been bought, then the tribute flower incident that condemned Mother's collapse from illness, and the destruction of the Shen family might not have been Gu Huaichuan's work alone. I had saved Pei Jiming, only to help an innocent man avoid the fate he suffered in my previous life. I never expected the first clue he gave me to point toward roots already rotting beneath the Shen family itself. Mother did not want me investigating Chunxing Nursery. Business is complicated and one must deal with all kinds of people. You are not married yet. Why involve yourself in such troubles? She sat by the window embroidering a purse for me. Her tone was gentle, but left no room for argument. I understood her concern. Mother had been born into a merchant family. After marrying into the Shen household, the phrase she heard most often was, "a merchant's daughter." Though my maternal family was among the wealthiest in Jiangnan, and father never looked down on her, some members of the Shen clan still whispered that she reeked of money. For that reason, she did not want me to deal too closely with business. She wanted me to read poetry and the classics, learn etiquette, become an impeccable young lady of an official household, and marry into a family of equal standing. In my previous life, I also believed the dowry she prepared would protect me forever, until Gu Huaichuan took it away piece by piece. "Mother," I sat beside her, "if the nursery continues losing money, will you still ignore it?" Her needle paused. "Who told you the nursery was losing money?" "The accounts." I placed 3 ledgers on the table. In June last year, the nursery reported 120 pots of white peonies destroyed. In August, it reported another 90 under the same batch number. But Chunxing Nursery purchased only 150 seedlings in total. Mother opened the ledgers. Her expression gradually grew serious. "And here," I continued, "old Wu, the gardener who died the year before last, was still receiving monthly wages until last month. The flower transport expenses are nearly double those paid by other firms. Where did you get these books? Zhao Quan sends copies to the residents every month. I found them in the storeroom. Mother was silent for a long while. Perhaps someone below him recorded things incorrectly. One error could be explained. Over the past 3 years, there are more than 70 similar discrepancies. I placed the list I had compiled before her. Mother, Zhao Quan is not merely growing forgetful with age. He is hollowing out your nursery. Her fingers trembled slightly. Zhao Quan was the dowry steward she brought from Jiangnan. He had worked for the Liu family for more than 20 years. When she married and came to the capital, he personally escorted her dowry and cared for everything along the road. To Mother, he was not simply a servant. He was a piece of trust left to her by her maiden family. I will ask him myself. She rose, but I stopped her. You cannot. Why? If he learns we are examining the books, he may destroy every piece of evidence tonight. I took her hand. Let me go to the nursery. Use preparations for your birthday flower banquet as the reason. No one will suspect anything. Mother still hesitated. You always say you do not want me involved in trade because you fear others will look down on me, I said softly. But if one day someone takes your property and uses it to harm the Shen family while I cannot even understand an account book, would that not be far worse? She looked at me for a long time. At last, Mother removed a bronze key from her waist and placed it in my palm. This opens the nursery's inner storeroom. Mother, do you trust me? It is not that I trust you, she sighed. It is that I can no longer pretend not to see. The next day, I took Qingdai and Nanny Lin, one of Mother's attendants, to Chunxing Nursery. Zhao Quan was already waiting outside. He was in his 50s, with graying hair. When I stepped from the carriage, his smile was especially warm. Why did you come personally, miss? The nursery is muddy, it may stain your embroidered shoes. Mother's birthday is next month. I want to choose flowers for the banquet. Please leave such a small matter to me. I wish to choose them myself. Something flickered in his eyes, but he quickly stepped aside. Chunxing Nursery covered nearly 17 acres and was divided into eastern and western compounds. The eastern compound grew ordinary plants. The western compound supplied noble residences and seasonal palace purchases. As I walked through, I found that the number of gardeners was nearly 30% lower than the ledgers claimed, and many greenhouses stood empty. Zhao Quan explained, the weather has been poor for the past 2 years. Seedlings are difficult to keep alive. To prevent further losses, I dismissed some workers. Then why do the books still show wages paid to them? His smile stiffened. Miss may not know that many gardeners no longer come here regularly, but still raise seedlings for us in the countryside. Where is the list? What list? The locations of the rural nurseries, and the varieties and quantities of flowers being raised. There should be records. Sweat appeared on Zhao Quan's forehead. The accounting room may have them. I will send someone to search. There is no need. I had Qingdai seal both the accounting room and the storeroom. Zhao Quan's expression changed sharply. Miss, what are you doing? Examining the accounts. You are young and do not understand business. Sealing rooms at random will disrupt the nursery. His words remained respectful, but his eyes no longer held any deference. Uncle Zhao has served Mother for many years. I should not doubt you. I entered the accounting room and sat in the main seat. But precisely because you are the person she trusts most, you should explain the books clearly. Zhao Quan's face hardened. Miss, I am an old servant of the Liu family. Even if Madame came personally, she would not humiliate me in this way. So you believe old affection gives you the right to collect wages using the names of the dead? I slapped old Wu's death record onto the table. Zhao Quan's lips moved. Perhaps the accountant overlooked it. And the peonies reported as losses twice? The batch numbers were similar. Someone may have copied them incorrectly. And why were the tribute flower transport fees twice the normal cost? Goods for the palace naturally require exceptional care. He found an excuse for every question until Qingdai carried 2 wooden chests from the inner storeroom. They did not contain silver or flower seeds. They held a stack of blank contracts already stamped with Father's private seal. The moment I saw the seal, cold spread across my back. In my previous life, Father was convicted because of a tribute flower purchase contract bearing that same seal. It supposedly proved that the Shen family had substituted inferior goods, accepted bribes and sent poisonous plants into the palace. Until the day he was imprisoned, Father insisted he had never signed it. No one believed him. Now identical blank contracts lay before me. Zhao Quan, I said quietly. Why do you possess my father's private seal? His face turned white. He spun toward the door, but the guards waiting there seized him. Zhao Quan struggled and shouted, a daughter privately investigating her mother's dowry estate is disrespectful. I demand to see Madam. I demand to see the old master of the Liu family. Take him back to the residence. Who dares touch me? He screamed. I am Madam's dowry servant, not a slave of the Shen family. Then invite my maternal uncle here. I had already sent someone to summon mother's elder brother Liu Mingchuan. 2 hours later, mother, uncle, and 2 elders of the Liu clan arrived at the nursery. Huaichuan knelt on the floor, weeping bitterly. I served the Liu family for more than 20 years. Even if I earned no merit, I endured much hardship. Miss Tangning wants to punish me over a few mistaken entries. It chills the heart. Third granduncle stroked his beard. Tangning is still young. Errors are inevitable in business accounts. Let Huaichuan repay the shortage and consider the matter settled. I looked at him. Does third granduncle know how large the shortage is? A few hundred taels at most. 47,600 taels. The room fell silent. I spread 3 years of ledgers across the table. Repeated losses, wages paid under false names, inflated transport charges, and private sales of rare seeds total 47,600 taels. Chunsing Nursery earns only about 20,000 taels a year. He has almost emptied 3 years of mother's profits. Third granduncle's expression darkened. Even so, this is a Liu family dowry property. An unmarried girl appearing publicly to inspect accounts will damage her reputation if word spreads. The dowry deed is perfectly clear. I removed mother's documents from a wooden case. Chengxing Nursery belongs to mother personally. She may appoint whomever she wishes to manage it. Third granduncle is neither its owner nor its creditor. Since when is it your place to decide whether a daughter of the Shen family may read its accounts? His face reddened, but he had no answer. Father glanced at me and unexpectedly did not rebuke me. Mother sat in the principal seat and spoke slowly. I gave Ninger permission to examine my accounts. Huaichuan stared at her in disbelief. Madam, you served me for more than 20 years, Mother said, her voice trembling. When I married, Father called you loyal and honest and told me to entrust the nursery to you. If you needed money, why did you not tell me? Huaichuan abruptly stopped crying. He raised his head, and the obedient expression gradually vanished from his face. Tell you? Madam married into an official household and lives in silk and luxury. How could you remember the lives of merchant servants like us? I guarded your nursery through wind and rain for a few dozen taels a year, so you falsified my accounts and stole my husband's private seal. Huaichuan's face stiffened. Uncle struck the table. Who ordered you to take the seal? Huaichuan clenched his teeth and refused to answer. I signaled the guards to open the second chest. It held a pile of letters. Most had been burned, leaving only fragments. One complete letter remained, stamped with the mark of Jingchun Trading House. It read, once Miss Shen's marriage is settled, the nurseries will naturally pass to the new son-in-law. At that time, the old accounts will be erased, and Manager Zhao may enjoy a comfortable retirement. The new son-in-law was Gu Huaichuan. After Mother read the letter, the last color drained from her face. Before Huaichuan was taken away, he suddenly looked back at me. Does Miss think that staying away from the flower market today, she can't escape her fate? His smile was eerie. Some people cannot be avoided. I stood on the steps and looked at him calmly. Then let him come. I would like to see in this life which of us truly cannot escape the other. Huaichuan was delivered to the capital prefecture, and Father's private seal was recovered. But I knew the matter was not over. Those blank contracts had already been stamped. No one knew whether others had been sent out. That night I organized the ledgers until midnight. A soft sound came from outside. I looked up and saw a pebble land on the windowsill. When I opened the window, Pei Jiming stood beneath the crabapple tree beyond the courtyard wall. Does the Court of Judicial Review usually teach its officers to climb walls at night? Entering through the main gate would alert others. He tossed a rolled sheet of paper toward me. I caught and opened it. It listed Huaichuan's financial transactions for the past 3 years. Every 3 months, Jingchun Trading House sent money to an account under the name of his distant nephew. The final payment had been made exactly 7 days before the flower market. Thank you, I said. I heard you investigated the nursery today. You received news quickly, my lord. Huaichuan was taken to the capital prefecture. It could not remain secret. He looked at the lamp burning on my desk. Are you planning to work through the night? There are still many accounts to organize. You have no one skilled in this kind of bookkeeping. I frowned. Do you intend to send someone to help? I already have. The next morning, an elderly accountant surnamed. He came to the Shen residence with one of Mother's old invitation cards. He said he was willing to help straighten out the accounts of Chunxing Nursery. He worked efficiently and identified flaws in 3 contracts within half a day. Only when he left did I notice a tiny Pei family pattern embroidered inside his cuff. I sent Pei Jiming a pot of pure heart orchids. The plant had once been damaged by insects, but after being pruned and nursed back to health, it opened its first flower that spring. Beneath the pot I placed a note, "Thank you. But next time, tell me first." That evening his reply appeared in the window frame. "All right, next time I will stand where you can see me." I held the note, and the corner of my mouth curved before I could stop it. The smile had not yet faded when Qingdai pulled a thin paper from a hidden compartment in one of the ledgers. "Miss, there is another contract here." I opened it. It was a palace order for the spring banquet. 200 pots of white peonies, 80 pots of pure heart orchids, and 30 fragrant trees. The date was the 8th day of the following month. Father's private seal was already stamped at the bottom, though he had never seen the contract. Looking out at the heavy night, I suddenly understood that the fire that destroyed the Shen family in my previous life had been lit long before I married Gu Huaichuan. Gu Huaichuan first appeared formally before me at a spring poetry gathering held by the Earl of Anping's household. I had not wanted to attend, but the Countess of Anping was close to Mother and had sent the invitation 3 times. More importantly, proprietor Shao of Jingchun Trading House was also amongst the guests. I needed to see how deeply Gu Huaichuan was connected to that firm. The poetry gathering was arranged beside a waterside pavilion. Young men and unmarried ladies sat on opposite banks, separated by a semi-transparent bamboo screen. It preserved propriety without preventing them from exchanging poems. Shen Rulan sat beside me and kept glancing across the water. Following her gaze, I saw Gu Huaichuan in a blue-green robe. 10 years had passed in my memories, and I believed I had forgotten his face. Yet the moment I saw him, every detail carved into my bones became clear again. Before speaking, he habitually tilted his head slightly, making himself appear attentive and humble. When he smiled, only the corners of his lips curved. He never showed his teeth. When his fingers tapped the rim of his cup, he was measuring the value of the person before him. I once mistook those habits for gentleness, composure, and caution. Now every movement looked rehearsed. Sensing my gaze, he raised his eyes. The instant our eyes met, cold swept through me. When he stood outside the locked courtyard in my previous life and told me not to blame him, he had worn the same expression, clear and mild, without a trace of guilt. Gu Huaichuan rose and bowed through the bamboo screen. "I am Gu Huaichuan." "Greetings, eldest Miss Shen," Rulan said happily. "Elder sister, this is young Master Gu, the man who saved me at the flower market." I inclined my head. Young Master Gu. There was no gratitude, no curiosity, and none of the trembling excitement that had haunted me in my previous life. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He had probably learned from Zhao Chuan and Chen Fu that I liked crabapple red clothes, poems about flowers, and refined scholars. Yet today I wore moonwhite and had not placed a single blossom in my hair. When the poetry contest began, everyone was asked to write about spring crabapples. Gu Huaichuan soon produced a 7-character poem. When it reached the ladies' seats, admiration rose around us. Young Master Gu is truly talented. The final line, "A red shadow shines upon a lonely heart," is especially moving. Rulan held the page, her eyes shining. The sight of that poem pricked my chest. In my previous life, Gu Huaichuan used it to confess his feelings to me. He said that when he saw me dressed in red at the flower market, he finally understood why the crabapple was also called the flower of a broken heart. I treasured that poem for 10 years. Even before the fire consumed the cold courtyard, I could not bring myself to burn it. Rulan passed it to me. "Elder sister, what do you think? Acceptable?" The waterside pavilion became quiet. Through the screen, Gu Huaichuan asked, "Miss Shen does not seem to like it." "It is not that I dislike it. There is simply one thing I do not understand." "Please tell me." I lifted the page. The 3rd line alludes to an old dream by the fragrant riverbank. "Since your subject is the crabapple, why did you suddenly quote a morning line from the former dynasty's Fragments of the Southern Garden?" Gu Huaichuan's expression stiffened slightly. "I merely borrowed its meaning to express my feelings." "Whose meaning did you borrow?" I instructed Qingdai to take an old poetry collection from the portable book box we had brought with us. Before coming to the gathering, I had borrowed it deliberately from Father's study. Turning to one page, I handed it to the Countess of Anping. The paper had yellowed with age. An anonymous poem on it was almost identical to Gu Huaichuan's, with only 2 characters changed. The entire pavilion fell silent. The Countess frowned. "This was written 10 years ago by a scholar surnamed Zhou in Yunzhou. Gu once saw it at an old bookstall. Perhaps my memory confused it with my own thoughts. I had no intention of plagiarism." "I see." I smiled faintly. "Young Master Gu has a remarkable memory." "You recalled an obscure work from 10 years ago almost word for word." Someone could not suppress a laugh. Proprietor Xiao of Jingchun Trading House sat beside Gu Huaichuan, his expression grim. Rulin tugged at my sleeve. Elder sister, perhaps young Master Gu truly remembered it incorrectly. Why embarrass him in public? I looked at her. Misremembering one or two lines is a mistake. Claiming an entire poem as one's own is plagiarism. But he saved me. A rescue proves only that he saved you at that moment. It does not prove that every word he speaks is true. Her eyes reddened, and she turned away from me. After the gathering, I followed the covered corridor toward the exit. Gu Huaichuan caught up from behind. Miss Shen, please wait. I stopped. He remained 3 steps away, close enough for me to see the sincerity in his eyes, but far enough not to seem improper. Regarding what happened today, I was at fault. You need not apologize to me. The poem was not mine. You appear to hold a prejudice against me. This is our first meeting. How could I? Precisely because it is our first meeting, your hostility seems strange. How had I failed to notice his sharpness in my previous life? Perhaps I had noticed but interpreted every test as concern. Young Master Gu is thinking too much. I merely happened to have seen the poem. Was it truly only a coincidence? He watched me, then lowered his voice. Shen, it feels as though we should not be so distant. A chill rose across my back. He had said the same thing in my previous life. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I discovered he was secretly corresponding with a powerful young lady and asked why he hid it. He smiled, held my hand, and said, "We are husband and wife, why should we be so distant?" Only later did I understand that whenever he spoke of closeness, he was preparing to take something from me. Young Master Gu, I met his gaze. We are strangers. Then I turned away. After rounding the corridor, my fingers began trembling beyond my control. A cup of warm tea appeared before me. I looked up and saw Pei Jiming beneath the eaves. The Earl of Anping had invited him to the gathering, but he had sat at the back of the men's section without participating. When did you arrive, my lord? Before you exposed the poem, I heard everything. I accepted the tea. The cup warmed my hands. Pei Jiming did not ask why I knew Gu Huaichuan's poem or why the man's words had unsettled me. He only said, "If you do not wish to see him, I can ensure he never enters the Shen residence." I tightened my grip on the cup. "No, I need him to enter." Pei Jiming frowned. "Only if he believes he still has a chance will he continue revealing his mistakes. Your face changes every time you see him. So what? There are many ways to investigate a case. You need not use yourself as bait." "Are you warning me, my lord?" I looked at him. "When you investigated the assassins, did you not deliberately appear alone at the flower market? If you had not used yourself as bait, you would not have been injured." He was silent for a moment. I was wrong that time. I had not expected such an answer. Gu Huaichuan never admitted fault. Even when evidence lay before him, he always claimed that circumstances had forced him, that others had misunderstood him, or that he had acted for the greater good. Gu Huaichuan and proprietor Xiao of Jingchun Trading House sat together today, Pei Jiming continued. During the past half-month they met 3 times at a tavern in the Western District. I do not yet know what they discussed, but Jingchun Trading House has recently been buying nurseries at low prices. They want Chunxing Nursery. I suddenly understood. After Gu Huaichuan married me in my previous life, the first thing he proposed was taking over the nursery to ease mother's burden. At the time, I was moved that he would put aside a scholar's pride to manage a merchant property. Now I saw that from the moment he approached me, his goal had never been only father's connections. He also wanted Chunxing Nursery's qualification to supply flowers to the palace. "I will keep allowing him to approach me," I said. Pei Jiming looked into the distance. "Then I will watch him with you. Are you not afraid I have another motive?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "But more than not knowing what you are doing, I fear that you will face it alone." Wind swept through the corridor. The tea in my hand had cooled, yet something warm seemed to touch my heart. That night, Gu Huaichuan sent a pot of crabapple blossoms. A letter was hidden inside the pot. He wrote that he deeply regretted what happened at the poetry gathering and wished to explain in person. Hearing that I liked crabapples, he had sent the plant as an apology. I ordered Qingdai to send the flowers to the front courtyard. "Tell the messenger the Shen family does not accept private gifts from unfamiliar men." "What about the letter?" Qingdai asked in surprise. "Keep it." I held the paper beneath a lamp. A faint watermark showed in the lower left corner, the mark on Jingchun Trading House's exclusive floral stationery. Even the first letter Gu Huaichuan wrote to me had been prepared by that firm. I placed it into a box. Good. We now had another piece of evidence. Shen Rulin remained angry with me for half a month. She still came to the main household every day to pay respects, but no longer linked arms with me and laughed as before. Whenever Gu Huaichuan was mentioned, she became particularly defensive. Second aunt had already invited him to the residence once to thank him. I deliberately stayed away that day. From the servants I heard that he not only refused the second branch's gifts, but also pointed out an error in one of second uncle's essays, earning everyone's praise. His greatest skill was making every person feel specially valued. When father opposed our marriage in my previous life, Gu Huaichuan never argued. He simply came again and again to ask father for guidance on his writing. 3 months later, father still disliked him, but had to admit he was humble and eager to learn. He was using the same method again, only his target had shifted from the main branch to the second. In early April, Rulan suddenly came to find me. Elder sister, the 18 wisteria vines at Lanruo Temple outside the city are blooming. Mother is going there to offer incense tomorrow. Come with us. Her tone sounded natural, but she would not meet my eyes. A fine trace of gold powder clung to her sleeve. The edges of Gu Huaichuan's letters carried the same powder. Will it be only us? Yu's mother and several older attendants. Very well. She clearly had not expected me to agree so easily. After a pause, she smiled. Then we will leave early tomorrow morning. When she had gone, Qingdai immediately closed the door. Miss, something is wrong with Miss Rulan. You saw it too? She has never been able to look at anyone when she lies. I took out the bronze fastener Pei Jiming had left. Send this to the Court of Judicial Review. Tell him it concerns Lanruo Temple. Qingdai obeyed. That evening, Pei Jiming entered the Shen residence through a side gate. You intend to go? Of course. You know it is a trap, yet you will enter it yourself. Gu Huaichuan now knows I am wary of him. If I refuse even Rulan's invitation, he will not reveal himself so easily again. We can have him followed. That is not enough evidence. He can claim any meeting was coincidence. Pei Jiming's face was cold. So you mean to let him show the entire trap? Yes. Shen Tangning, investigating a case is not the same as wagering your life. I am not wagering my life. Drugged incense, scandalous rumors, a staged private meeting, any one of those going wrong could destroy your reputation. I will have the incense burner replaced in advance. Qingdai will summon the abbess, and mother will arrive at the side hall at the agreed time. And what if he arranged a blade instead of incense? For a moment I had no answer. Pei Jiming stepped closer. You calculate every possibility only within what you believe you can endure. But an accident does not ask whether you are prepared. Then what do you propose? I will go in your place. I laughed despite my anger. Gu Huaichuan's trap is meant for a Shen daughter. How could you replace me? I could arrest him directly. Without firm evidence he would be released. Then he would hide more deeply next time. At least you would be safe. For the first time we truly argued. The candle burned steadily between us, neither yielded. At last I said, Pei Jiming, this is my plan. His eyes darkened. And it is my case. I am the one being plotted against. Does that give you permission to disregard your own safety? The words in my previous life almost escaped me. I stopped just in time. Pei Jiming caught it immediately. What? Nothing. I turned away. In any case, I will go tomorrow. Silence stretched behind me. All right, he finally said. I turned back. His expression had become calm again. You carry out your plan, he said. I will protect you. Lanruo Temple was crowded with worshippers the next day. After second aunt offered incense, she said she was going to admire flowers on the rear hill with several acquaintances. Rulan led me toward the wisteria, then halfway there claimed she felt dizzy and asked Shuyu to stay with her. Elder sister, wait for me in the side hall. I will drink some water and come soon. She spoke quickly. I did not expose her. I walked alone toward the side hall. The door was half closed and incense burned within. Gu Huaichuan stood before the Buddha statue in a plain blue robe. When he saw me, he displayed exactly the right amount of surprise. Miss Shen? Young Master Gu, why are you here? I came to pray for my late father. I did not expect to meet you. Another coincidence. In my previous life, I had believed them again and again. Gu Huaichuan approached. After the poetry gathering, you returned my flowers. I have wanted to explain in person, but never found the opportunity. There is no need. You misunderstand me deeply. We are not acquainted, so there can be no misunderstanding. He sighed. Yet I always feel we should not be so distant. It was the second time he had said that. I glanced toward the burner. Sweet smoke curled upward. It was not the sandalwood normally used at the temple, but incense mixed with a floral powder intended to arouse infatuation. The day before, I had Qingdai bribe the young novice who swept the hall to replace the original mixture with ordinary agarwood. The incense now burning had clearly been added personally by Gu Huaichuan just before I entered. Young Master Gu, I suddenly asked, why were you certain I would come here? His gaze paused. It was only a chance meeting. Then why did you prepare a letter on paper decorated with the crab apples I like? From behind the offering table, I picked up an envelope bearing my name. Gu Huaichuan's expression finally changed. Will young Master Gu still call this a coincidence? I walked toward him step by step. The flower market rescue was a coincidence. The copied poem was a lapse of memory. Our meeting at Lanro Temple is another coincidence. Your life contains an extraordinary number of accidents. After a moment of silence, he smiled. It was different from his usual gentle expression, carrying the calm of someone whose disguise had been stripped away. Miss Shen is indeed intelligent, so you admit it? I merely wished to see you, and therefore bought off my cousin and had her lure me into this side hall? Miss Rulin was only willing to help. What about the incense? Gu Huaichuan glanced at the burner. It is only a fragrance that helps people relax. Is that so? I pushed the burner over. Ash scattered across the floor, revealing a small incense pellet stamped with Jingchun Trading House's mark. Gu Huaichuan's face tightened. He moved toward the door, but it opened before he could reach it. Second aunt, Shen Rulin, several Shen family matrons and the abbess of Lanro Temple stood outside. Rulin's face was bloodless. She clearly had not expected her mother to come. Young Master Gu? She looked at the marked incense pellet on the floor. Did you not say you only wished to explain the misunderstanding from the poetry gathering to elder sister? Gu Huaichuan regained his composure at once. Miss Rulin, I never asked you to do anything. Meeting Miss Shen at the temple today was merely chance. You clearly wrote to me. Rulin stopped abruptly. If she admitted receiving a private letter, her own reputation would suffer. Gu Huaichuan had calculated that weakness before using her. I did not force her. Young Master Gu is correct, I said evenly. No one here can prove he asked Rulin to bring me. A flicker of triumph appeared in his eyes, but the mark on the incense pellet is clear, and the temple's resident abbess can testify. Whether young Master Gu privately burned an unknown substance merely to help people relax can be determined by sending it to the capital prefecture for examination. His expression changed sharply. At that moment, a masked figure leaped through the rear window of the side hall and rushed toward me with a blade aimed straight at me. Everything happened too quickly. I managed only half a step backward before a dark figure moved in front of me. Pei Jiming drew his blade and parried the attacker. Steel rang through the hall as several officers of the Court of Judicial Review entered at the same time. Seeing the situation turn against him, the assailant broke through the window and fled. Pei Jiming followed for 2 steps, then stopped. A cut had opened along his left arm. My lord! Chengqing pursued the fleeing man. Gu Huaichuan tried to leave amid the confusion, but the officers blocked him. He looked at Pei Jiming, his expression dark with anger. Why are you here, my lord? Pei Jiming did not answer. He simply ordered. Gu Huaichuan brought prohibited incense into the temple without authorization. Take him to the capital prefecture for questioning. You have no authority. The Court of Judicial Review is investigating an attempted killing. We have the authority to seize relevant evidence and detain witnesses. His voice was not loud, but no one dared argue further. Rulin stood in place with tears running down her face. When Gu Huaichuan passed her, he did not look at her even once. In that instant, she finally understood that she had never been the person he intended to protect. On the return journey, Pei Jiming and I shared a carriage. His injury was not deep, though blood had soaked his sleeve. I opened the medicine box and bandaged it. Did you not promise not to interfere with my plan? I did not. You were clearly prepared when the attacker appeared. I waited outside. If no danger had appeared, I would never have entered. My hands paused. He had truly kept his promise. Though he disagreed with me, he had allowed me to finish my own plan. Does it hurt? I tightened the bandage slightly. His brows finally drew together. Is Miss Shen taking revenge on me? Did you not claim you were unafraid of pain? Who said that? You made no sound in the greenhouse, because sound would have drawn the assassins. I looked up. Pei Jiming lowered his eyes and suddenly asked, Will you always use yourself as bait? Do you not place yourself in the most dangerous position whenever you investigate? I did before. I will not now. Why? The carriage rolled over the stone road and the wind lifted one corner of the curtain. Pei Jiming looked at the bandage I had tied, because now someone would worry. My fingers trembled. The carriage became so quiet that only the wheels could be heard. I lowered my head and packed the medicine box, not daring to look at him again. After returning home, Rulin shut herself in her room for 3 days. I did not go to comfort her. Some pain had to be faced and acknowledged by the person who bore it. On the 4th day, Chuyi brought me a letter containing only 1 sentence. Elder sister, I am sorry. I placed it in a box without replying. An apology was not the end. Rulin needed to understand that the real harm was not that Gu Huaichuan had never loved her, but that to preserve a false romance, she had nearly destroyed another woman with her own hands. That same day, the Court of Judicial Review sent its findings. The incense pellet contained a substance that could cloud the mind. The sash dropped by the escaping attacker bore a hidden pattern used in the inner residence of Duke Dingguo's household. At the bottom of Pei Jiming's confidential letter was one line. The person behind Jingchun Trading House may be Madame Liu, Pei Jiming's stepmother, the woman whose son took his position as heir in my previous life. The trap that began at the flower market had finally revealed the shadow behind it. After Zhao Quan was imprisoned, Chunxing Nursery quickly fell into disorder. Flower farmers who had supplied it for years suddenly canceled their contracts, and carriage firms refused to accept deliveries. Within 10 days, nearly 30% of the seedlings in the western compound died. For the palace spring banquet the following month, the Court of Imperial Sacrifices was purchasing white peonies and pure heart orchids. Father did not handle the flowers directly, but he was responsible for reviewing approved suppliers. If Chunxing Nursery failed to deliver on time, it would owe compensation and father's official reputation would suffer. Mother was so anxious she could not sleep. Several clan elders seized the opportunity to visit and advise her to sell the nursery cheaply to Jingchun Trading House. The nursery's business has been badly damaged. It is fortunate anyone is willing to take it over. Merchants value trust above all. If the palace order is delayed, Tingzhang may be implicated. Jingchun Trading House is offering 20,000 taels. It is less than before, but better than losing everything. At its height, Chunxing Nursery had been worth at least 100,000 taels. They wanted mother to sell it for 20,000. I listened from behind the screen for a while, then walked out. Who said we are selling? Third granduncle frowned. We are discussing serious business. You are an unmarried girl. The nursery is mother's dowry, and I am her daughter. Why can I not listen? Knowing how to examine a few ledgers does not mean you understand management. The suppliers have withdrawn, the seedlings are dying, and the carriage firms refuse us. Can you create flowers from nothing? No. I placed a list on the table, but 47 small flower farmers near the capital have large stores of seedlings because they refused Jingchun Trading House's lowball offers. I have signed 3-year contracts with them. Everyone froze. What about transportation? Third granduncle demanded. No carriage firm in the capital will move goods for Chunxing Nursery. The Liu family has its own merchant ships and carriage fleet, Uncle said as he entered. From today onward, the Liu family will transport Chunxing Nursery's goods. Third granduncle's face darkened. The Liu family is a merchant family from Jiangnan, interfering in the capital's business. Uncle smiled. Chunxing Nursery was a Liu family dowry property to begin with. How is that interference? The elders had no response and left in frustration. Mother still looked worried. Even with seedlings, we cannot immediately replace the lost silver. That is why we will no longer sell only rare flowers. I placed a new business plan before her. In the past, Chunxing Nursery dealt only with wealthy clients. A single peony might sell for dozens of taels, but it required years of cultivation, and one failed crop erased the entire investment. Beginning next month, the Eastern Compound will grow seasonal flowers in 3 price levels, including varieties ordinary households can afford. The Western Compound will continue cultivating rare plants but will no longer depend entirely on palace and noble orders. Mother examined the densely written pages. What is a 4 seasons floral subscription? A customer prepays for 3 months or half a year. Each month, the nursery delivers 1 seasonal potted plant, 1 packet of dried flowers, and 10 sheets of flower pattern stationery. The exact materials may vary. This uses surplus stock and brings in money in advance. Damaged petals can be made into scented water, dye, and floral writing paper. During my 10 years managing the Gu household, when we were poorest, I learned to make use of every scrap of cloth and handful of rice. Later, as Gu Huaichuan's rank rose, I had to study which fragrances, ornaments, and furnishings noblewomen preferred so I could maintain his social connections. The skills he dismissed as petty women's tricks could now save Mother's nursery. But we lack workers, Mother said. Among the farmers near the capital are many widows and women who have been repudiated by their husbands. They know how to raise seedlings and make incense, but large businesses refuse to employ them because of their status. I want to hire them. People will gossip. Will gossip vanish if we refuse to open the workshop? I took her hand. Mother, people do not despise merchants because we perform poorly. They despise us because they need someone below them. Even if we do nothing, they will not suddenly respect us. Mother was silent for a long time, then finally nodded. Do as you think best. When the 4 Seasons floral subscription was first launched, the capital responded poorly. Jingchun Trading House sent people to spread rumors that flowers touched by widows carried ill fortune. Others said an unmarried young lady who appeared publicly in business would never find a husband. Qingdai was furious and wanted to argue, but I stopped her. The more we explain, the guiltier we will appear. Then do we let them say whatever they please? No. I handed her the first customer list. Have the Countess of Anping, the wife of the Minister of Rights, and the old Madam of Duke Dingguo's household subscribed? The first two have. Duke Dingguo's household, her expression became strange. Ordered 12 subscriptions. Does the old madam need that many? It was not the old madam, it was Lord Pei. I paused. 12 subscriptions covered an entire year. What would a man like him do with monthly flowers? Qingdai suppressed a smile. The messenger said Lord Pei's study was too empty and cold. I had the first pot delivered personally to the Court of Judicial Review. It was an ordinary jasmine plant, and beneath it I placed the exact price list, without discounting a single coin. That evening, Pei Jiming sent back the full amount, down to the last coin, along with a note. The flowers are excellent. The study truly feels less cold. I looked at his neat handwriting, and could not help smiling. Qingdai leaned over. Miss, did Lord Pei order flowers only to verify the subscription plan? She deliberately made the question sound stiff and serious, though her eyes were full of teasing. What truly revived Chunxing Nursery was the Earl of Anping's spring banquet. In Mother's name, I displayed the floral dew and patterned stationery to the guests, and publicly released the names of the women working in our workshop. Those women who supposedly brought ill fortune included one caring for elderly parents-in-law, one raising a young son alone, and another driven from her husband's family after he died. They were not unlucky, they simply needed honest work that would let them live. The Countess of Anping ordered 300 sets of stationery on the spot. The wife of the Minister of Rights bought all the jasmine floral dew. Overnight gossip about misfortune became praise for charity. By the second month, the number of Four Seasons floral subscriptions exceeded 500. Chunxing Nursery not only restored its cash flow, but began repaying the missing funds early. When I first received the profitable account book, I stood alone in the nursery for a long time. After Mother died in my previous life, Gu Huaichuan sold Chunxing Nursery to Jingchun Trading House. I begged him to preserve this last piece of her, but he said, "It is merely a place of business. Why cling to it?" Only now did I understand that what I wished to preserve had never been only land and flowers. It was Mother's labor, the livelihoods of people who survived through their own hands, and the confidence that I could stand securely, even without depending on marriage. On the day the palace flowers departed for the spring banquet, I personally checked every pot and remembered every seal, kiln mark and carriage number clearly. Yet less than 4 hours after the flowers entered the palace, Father was urgently summoned. When he returned that evening, his face was ashen. Poisonous powder was found among the palace flowers. Mother's teacup fell and shattered. What? It was hidden beneath the roots of a pot of pure heart orchids. A palace worker discovered it while moving the plant. No one was harmed. I stood abruptly. Where is the pot? Sealed at the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. Was the transport seal intact? Completely intact. Impossible. I inspected every plant myself. Unless the pot was replaced before entering the palace, Father looked at me. The bottom bears Chunxing Nursery's mark. The purchase contract also carries my private seal. It was identical to what happened in my previous life. Even though I exposed Zhao Chuan in advance, even though we recovered the blank contracts, the forged evidence intended to destroy Father still appeared. Fate was like a snake, hidden in darkness. Thank you for supporting
twisted around
Panda.
every step
If you
I
enjoyed the
changed
story,
and struck at
don't
the
forget
Shen
to
family
like,
again.
comment, and subscribe.
This time
Your
I did not
support
panic.
helps us bring
Father,
you more
take me to
amazing
see the
stories.
pot tomorrow.
Now,
He frowned.
let's begin
This is an
story
official
2. Case, but I know the firing marks of every batch of pots commissioned by Chunxing Nursery. I met his gaze. One glance will tell me whether that pot is ours. Father was suspended pending investigation. Though he had not yet been imprisoned, unfamiliar eyes watched the Shen residence. Clan elders all became ill overnight and refused to visit. Several noble households that had rushed to subscribe to Four Seasons floral subscriptions sent servants to cancel their orders. Mother sat in the accounting room, returning their money one entry at a time. Her fingers never stopped trembling. The same had happened after Father's arrest in my previous life. The people most eager to associate with the Shen family during its prosperity were the quickest to flee. I pressed my hand over the ledger. Mother, do not refund them. If the palace case implicates the nursery, they are withdrawing because they are afraid. If we return everything today, we admit that Chunxing Nursery is guilty. Mother looked at me with reddened eyes. Ninger, I am not distressed about the silver. I am afraid this will implicate you too. We are already implicated. I crouched before her. Retreat will not keep us safe. We must prove that the pot did not enter the palace from Chunxing Nursery. The next day, I accompanied Father to the Court of Imperial Sacrifices. The disputed pot was sealed separately. Its glaze, size and shape closely resembled Chunqing Nursery's custom pots. The characters Chunqing were fired into the bottom. I crouched and ran my fingertips over the base. This is not ours. The official in charge frowned. How can Miss Shen be certain? Chunqing's Nursery's pots are made at the Chen family kiln in the southern district of the capital. That kiln uses fine river clay, which leaves narrow horizontal lines on the base after firing. This pot has circular marks and is made from red clay found north of the capital. The mark is the same. A mark can be copied. Clay and kiln fire cannot. I had a genuine Chunqing pot brought in. Placed side by side, the differences were obvious. The official's expression grew grave. The seal is intact, which means the plant was replaced before it entered the court of imperial sacrifices. The most likely location is the inspection station outside the palace gate, but the two clerks who had worked at that station disappeared that very day. The court of imperial sacrifices refused to accept responsibility and tried to keep the case focused on father. At that point, the Court of Judicial Review formally took over the investigations into Jingchun Trading House and the attempt on Pei Jiming's life. Pei Jiming argued that the pollen and transport routes in the two cases overlapped closely and should be examined together. When officials accused him of being too close to the Shen family, he publicly withdrew from presiding over the main inquiry and limited himself to tracing the source of Jingchun Trading House's poisonous powder. He neither used power to shield the Shen family nor withdrew entirely in the name of avoiding suspicion. After returning home, father was silent for a long time. Lord Pei conducts himself fairly. I heard the shift in his tone but said nothing. That night, Pei Jiming sent word from the Court of Judicial Review. Jingchun Trading House owned an abandoned warehouse in the Western District. During the past 6 months, goods had repeatedly been moved there at night without appearing in its ledgers. I changed into men's clothing and went with Qingdai to the Western District. Halfway there, Pei Jiming was already waiting at the entrance to an alley. When he saw me, his expression became severe. I sent the information so you could provide clues about the flower pots, not so you could come yourself. I know Jingchun Trading House's fragrances and seals. I can identify them. You could draw the seals. A drawing cannot preserve a scent. Shen Tangning. Every moment you delay gives the people inside time to leave. He studied me for a long time, then moved aside and followed behind me. The abandoned warehouse was filled with empty pots and wooden crates. Some crates bore Chunqing Nursery's mark but contained night-blooming jasmine, aconite, and other harmful floral powders. I recognized red clay fragments used in the forged pots. The false palace pot was prepared here. Pei Jiming ordered Chongqing to search the records. We had just reached the rear of the warehouse when a lock snapped shut outside. Smoke began seeping through the door. Fire! Qingdai cried. Flames spread quickly along the dry branches stacked inside. Pei Jiming kicked open a side door, only to find it boarded shut from outside. The moment I smelled smoke, my body froze. The crackle of burning beams merged with the sound of the cold courtyard in my previous life. Once again I heard Gu Huaichuan outside the locked door. Tangning, do not blame me. The shouts around me faded. I knew I should run, but my legs felt nailed to the floor. I could not even breathe. Someone seized my shoulders. Shen Tangning. I could not see his face. Before me stood only that door from my previous life, the one that never opened. Look at me. His voice cut through the smoke. Shen Tangning, look at me. Pei Jiming stood between me and the flames, blocking them from my sight. At last I saw his eyes. This is not the past, he said. My lips trembled. The door will not open. It will. We will burn. We will not. He took my hand and pressed it against his chest. Beneath my palm, his heart beat hard and real. The door is behind me. Chongqing found a way out. If you are willing to trust me, follow me. Flaming debris fell from the roof. I flinched instinctively. Pei Jiming did not force me into his arms or drag me. He simply stood there and waited for my choice. I clenched my teeth and gripped his hand in return. Go. He covered Qingdai and me with a soaked cloak and led us toward the rear wall. Chongqing had pried loose a plank with an iron bar. We crawled through the opening just before the warehouse collapsed. Pei Jiming emerged last. Sparks had scorched part of the robe across his back. I knelt on the ground, coughing, yet still held his hand tightly. Officers of the Court of Judicial Review surrounded us. When Chongqing moved to help me, I finally realized everyone was watching. My lord, I said hoarsely, you may release me now. Pei Jiming looked down. You are the one holding me. My fingers stiffened. I tried to let go, but he closed his hand around mine instead. You trusted me once just now. It will do no harm to trust me a little longer. My eyes suddenly burned. Whenever I was afraid in my previous life, Gu Huaichuan told me to be sensible, endure it, and not create trouble for him. No one had ever stood between me and a fire and said, "This is not the past." No one had ever waited for me to reach out by my own choice. From the other side of the warehouse, an officer rescued a partially burned ledger. It recorded Jingchun Trading House's secret accounts for nearly 2 years. One entry read, "3rd day of the 4th month, 300 taels to Gu Huaichuan. Purpose, Shen family carriage and horses." I stared at that line. The delusion I cherished for 10 years finally had unmistakable written proof. Gu Huaichuan knew from the beginning that the horses would panic because he had paid to make it happen. Yet the ledger alone was not enough to clear father. The shopkeeper of Jingchun Trading House fled overnight, as did the 2 clerks from the palace inspection station. Madame Lu submitted a memorial first, claiming Jingchun Trading House had no connection to Duke Dingguo's household, and that any hidden patterns or account books could have been forged. 3 days later, father was temporarily detained. When the prison cart stopped before the Shen residence, I stood on the steps and could scarcely breathe. The scene was exactly the same as in my previous life. Father in shackles, his official robe stripped away, mother too weak to stand from crying, my brother running after the cart for half a street. Then, I had already married into the Gu family. When I heard the news, I knelt outside Gu Huaichuan's study and begged him to use his connections to save father. From behind the closed door, he said, "Tangning, the evidence is conclusive. If you force me to speak for a convicted official, you will destroy my future." I knelt all night. The next day, he entered the palace with testimony from Jingchun Trading House and personally accused the Shen family of accepting bribes. Now I stood before the same prison cart. Father looked at me. "Take care of your mother." I descended the steps and straightened his disordered collar. "Your daughter will bring you home." His lips moved. At last, he only nodded. After the cart left, mother fainted in my brother's arms. I had no time to cry. I first summoned a physician and settled mother. Then I asked my brother to contact every colleague of father's who had handled the palace flower case. Qingdai and I spread 6 months of Chunxing Nursery's transport records across the floor. Every palace plant passed through at least 5 hands from the flower farmer to the nursery, and from the nursery to the palace gate. As long as even one of those people remained alive, it would have been impossible to erase every trace. Late that night, the steward reported, "Young Master Gu requests an audience." I raised my head. "Let him in." Gu Huaichuan entered in a blue-green long robe, concern written across his face. "Miss Shen, I heard what happened to Lord Shen. You received news quickly. The Shen family and I are connected by fate. How could I not care? Fate." I nearly laughed. After sitting, he lowered his voice. "The case involves the palace, so ordinary people cannot interfere. But I recently became acquainted with an influential person who may be able to help Lord Shen. What are your conditions?" Gu Huaichuan paused. "Why would Miss Shen ask that? You came late at night. Surely you did not come merely to tell me you know someone powerful." After a moment, he smiled helplessly. "You always think too badly of people, then assume I was wrong. Please leave." I stood to dismiss him. Gu Huaichuan finally said, "If you and I became husband and wife, I would naturally treat the Shen family's troubles as my own." I stopped. In my previous life, I knelt before him and begged him to save father. In this life, he offered father's life as leverage to make me marry him. Whichever path I took, he always raised his price when others were most desperate. "You wish to marry me? I know proposing now is inappropriate. But because the Shen family is in danger, I want you to understand that I am willing to share the burden." "Who is your powerful patron?" "I cannot say yet." "Madame Lu of Duke Dingguo's household." Gu Huaichuan's face changed abruptly. The hall became so quiet that a falling needle could have been heard. I pushed open the main doors. Shen family servants filled the courtyard. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Did young Master Gu not say he wished to share the Shen family's burden? Then let everyone hear clearly." I raised my voice. "Young Master Gu says that if I marry him, he can ask an influential patron to save my father. Will he repeat before the entire Shen household who that patron is and why this person can influence the palace flower case?" All gentleness vanished from Gu Huaichuan's face. "Shen Tangning, you need not humiliate me. You are the one using my father's life to force a marriage. You have only humiliated yourself." He swept out angrily. Before he reached the door, I deliberately let him see a corner of a scorched ledger on the table. It was a copy I had ordered made. The genuine secret account book was already at the Court of Judicial Review. That night, Gu Huaichuan went to a manor in the western district of the capital. Pei Jiming's men followed him. The missing clerk from the palace gate was hidden there, and he was still alive. Early the next morning, Pei Jiming came to the Shen residence and placed the organized statements before me one by one. The palace gate clerk admits that before the tribute flowers entered the palace, People from Jingchun Trading House replaced one pot. The false pot and poisonous powder came from the abandoned warehouse in the Western District. Will he testify? He is still hesitating. What is Madame Lu using to control him? His wife and child are being held at another manor. I closed my eyes. Can they be found? I already sent people. The lamps burned throughout the night. I read the statements until my eyes felt dry and painful. Pei Jiming did not tell me to rest. He sat on the other side of the table and arranged witness lists. Near dawn, I suddenly asked, "Why do you not tell me that you will certainly save my father?" His hands stopped. What? When people comfort someone, they usually say nothing will happen and everything will be well. I cannot guarantee that, but if you said it, perhaps I would feel calmer. Pei Jiming looked at me. I cannot use your father's life to deceive you into peace. He placed the final statement before me. This is what we have found so far. We will find the rest together today. My nose stung sharply. Gu Huaichuan was a master of promises. He said he would treat me well for life, never betray the Shen family's kindness, and one day make me the most honored wife in the capital. Pei Jiming promised nothing. Yet he sat beside me all night and laid every piece of evidence that might save father before me. At dawn, Chongqing rushed inside. My lord, we found them. The palace clerk's wife and child were held at a country estate belonging to Duke Dingguo's household. While rescuing them, the officers found an elderly gardener. He once cultivated medicinal flowers for the household. 20 years ago, he personally delivered the orchids used before your birth mother died. 2 cases separated by many years were finally connected. The palace gate clerk agreed to testify. But before the formal hearing, he had to be safely transferred to the Court of Judicial Review. Madame Lu clearly knew this as well. Chongqing reported that her people intended to act when the flower market reopened in May. The March market had ended early because of the frightened carriage and the attack on Pei Jiming. To compensate the merchants, the capital prefecture decided to hold it again on the 5th day of the 5th month. Chunxing Nursery was the largest flower seller participating. If I did not appear, the nursery's reputation would suffer, and Madame Lu would realize we knew her plan. When mother learned I intended to go, she refused absolutely. Ninger, danger has found you near the flower market twice already. You cannot take another risk. Precisely because they believe I will be too afraid to go, I must appear. Let your uncle represent you. You own Chunxing Nursery, but I am the one managing this event. No one can replace me. Mother shook her head, her eyes red. I embraced her. Mother, I am not trying to prove my courage. I simply cannot hide forever. When I first returned, I thought avoiding the flower market would allow me to avoid Gu Huaichuan. Yet he still came. Father's case still happened. Fire still reached me. Fate was not a river one could escape merely by choosing another road. Some things had to be cut away by one's own hand. On the day the flower market reopened, I put on a pomegranate red outer robe. Qingdai's eyes reddened as she tied my belt. Miss, please wear soft armor beneath it. It will make the robe bulky. Bulky is better than hurt. Unable to persuade her, I wore a light layer of soft armor under my clothes. When I left the Shen residence, Pei Jiming stood beside the carriage. He had formally returned to his post as Deputy Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, but today he wore ordinary dark clothing without an official hat. Will you ride with me, my lord? No. Why? They are watching you. If I am in the carriage, they will not act. He pointed toward the street corner. I will be where you can see me whenever you turn around. Following his gaze, I saw Chongqing and several plainclothes officers already mixed into the crowd. I nodded and entered the carriage. As it reached the southern market, flower fragrance and vendors' calls surrounded us. Memories from 10 years earlier rushed back. The stone bridge, the tavern and the street hung with colored banners. My horse had panicked there in my previous life. My fingers tightened around the curtain. Qingdai looked at me anxiously. Miss? I am all right. I lifted the curtain and looked behind us. Pei Jiming rode beyond the edge of the crowd. Sensing my gaze, he nodded once. He did not hurry me or approach. He simply let me know he was there. The carriage continued to Chunxing Nursery's stall at the far end of the market. After getting down, I personally inspected every display. According to the plan, the palace gate clerk was concealed among the flower carts. He would enter the Court of Judicial Review's protected area by another route. To identify anyone tampering with the carts, we had coated the axles and crates with blue vine pollen. It was colorless and odorless, turned blue when wet, and could not be washed away for 3 days. At noon, when the market was at its busiest, a flower cart suddenly blocked the street. My carriage should have been parked in the rear alley, but the driver shouted, "The horse is frightened!" The horse neighed and dragged the empty carriage toward the crowd. Chaos erupted exactly as in my previous life. A man in a blue-green robe rushed from the crowd, apparently trying to seize the reins. Gu Huaichuan. He still intended to repeat his heroic rescue. But this time I was not in the carriage. The compartment was filled with bags of soaked flower soil. When the wheel struck a stone post, the heavy load tipped over and covered him in mud. Officers sealed the street at once. The flower cart actually carrying the witness had already left by another route. A black-clad man saw the plan fail and tried to flee. "Water!" Qingdai shouted. Workers at both sides splashed buckets across the street. The man's hands and cuffs immediately turned deep blue. He could no longer disappear into the crowd. Officers surrounded and seized him. Gu Huaichuan climbed from the mud, his face twisted with anger. "Shen Tangning, you set a trap for me. Did young Master Gu not come to save someone?" I stood on the stall steps. "The carriage was empty. How did you know which side to rush toward?" He had no answer. Shen Rulan emerged from behind the crowd, pale and carrying a wooden box. When Gu Huaichuan saw her, his gaze turned cold. "Rulan, why are you here?" It was the first time he had called her name with such apparent intimacy. Her body trembled. Once, that single word would have softened her heart. Instead, she opened the box and removed his letters one by one. "You wrote these to me. You said saving me at the flower market was destined by heaven. You said that if I helped you meet elder sister, you would ask the Shen family for my hand." She raised her face as tears fell. "But in every letter, you asked what elder sister liked when she left home and how the nursery was managed. You never once asked what I liked." Gu Huaichuan said coldly. "Letters can be forged. What about this?" She produced a jade fastener. It fit perfectly into the missing place on the belt Gu Huaichuan was wearing. "You dropped it in the side hall at Lanro Temple." The crowd began murmuring. Gu Huaichuan suddenly lunged toward me, drawing a small blade from his sleeve. I had anticipated it and stepped aside. Before he could reach me, Pei Jiming moved in front of me and kicked the blade from his hand. Gu Huaichuan was forced to the ground, but he continued, staring at me. "Why?" His voice was hoarse. "Shen Tangning, I have never truly harmed you. Why have you opposed me from our first meeting?" I looked at him. Of course he did not understand. In this life, Gu Huaichuan had not yet divorced me, destroyed my family or left me to die in a fire. But he had already bribed a driver, staged the carriage incident, used Shen Rolan, prepared the incense trap, and joined the plot against father. An act does not become evil only after it achieves its worst possible result. From the moment he treated other lives as steps toward power, he lost the right to ask why. "Because you must answer for everything you have done." As Gu Huaichuan was taken away, he suddenly laughed. "Shen Tangning, do you think Pei Jiming approached you only to repay a debt?" My heart tightened. He struggled to look back. "He knew long ago that your father may have been connected to his mother's death." The noise around us seemed to vanish. I looked at Pei Jiming. He stood still and did not deny it. In that moment, I understood that some truths might not change an outcome, but they could change how two people stood before one another. Pei Jiming had indeed approached the Shen family for more than the recent assassination case. 20 years earlier, his birth mother, Madame Pei, died. Duke Dingguo's household announced that a chronic illness had relapsed. But the elderly gardener testified that before her death, Madame Pei had used a medicinal orchid delivered through the Shen family's palace flower root. Slow poison had been mixed beneath its roots. At that time, the official responsible for reviewing the approved flower merchants of the Court of Imperial Sacrifices had been father. "So you suspected my father," I said. We stood in the archive room of the Court of Judicial Review, separated by a long table. Pei Jiming placed every old case file before me. "From when, after I woke in the greenhouse, you learned who I was and began investigating the Shen family?" I had already been investigating. He neither explained nor avoided the question. His honesty made me even angrier. "Then the token you left, the people you sent to help me examine the accounts, and all the help you gave in the palace flower case, how much was real, and how much was intended to investigate father?" "At first both." My fingers turned cold, and later? After a pause, Pei Jiming answered. "Later I learned that Lord Shen discovered errors in the flower supplier records and reported them 3 times, but his superiors suppressed the reports. He privately kept a copy. It was lost when his old residence burned." "Why did you not tell me?" "Before finding complete evidence, I did not want you defending Lord Shen." "Did you not want me to defend him? Or were you afraid I would interfere?" "Both." I laughed once. "Pei Jiming, at least you are honest. I know hiding it was wrong. You knew, yet you did it." "Yes." He offered no excuse and did not claim it was for my sake. Precisely because of that, I could find no lie to tear apart. "All the files are here." He set a key on the table. You may read them yourself or have Lord Shen send someone to verify them. Are you not afraid I will destroy evidence harmful to the Shen family? Yes. Then why give me the key? Because continuing to hide it would be the surest way to lose your trust. I stared at the key. In my previous life, Gu Huaichuan also had a study I was never permitted to enter. He said it contained state secrets that women should not question. Later I learned it held his letters with Madame Lu and every forged item used before the Shen family was condemned. Pei Jiming, I asked, what if the evidence ultimately proves father guilty? He will be punished according to law. Even though he is my father? Even if he were my father. The anger in my chest suddenly settled. I knew this was what first drew me to him. He would not declare a loved one's family innocent merely because of affection. What he gave me was not favoritism, but the right to discover the truth. I need time. All right, do not come to the Shen residence for the next few days. All right. He agreed so readily that a bittersweet ache rose in me. Before leaving the Court of Judicial Review, I looked back. Pei Jiming remained at the archive room entrance. He did not follow me, nor use the life I had saved. Our cooperation or feelings, neither of us had spoken to force forgiveness from me. 3 days later, I finished every file. Father had not participated in Madame Pei's death. The people who replaced the medicinal orchid had again come from Jingchen Trading House. At that time, the firm was still small, and its financial backer was Madame Lu, newly married into Duke Dingguo's household. More than 10 years after killing Pei Jiming's mother, she used the same flower merchant route to attack him and frame father. It was not a scheme invented recently. She had used that path to harm more than one person. On the day of the formal hearing, crowds filled the area outside the Court of Judicial Review. Father Gu Huaichuan, the shopkeeper of Jingchen Trading House, the palace gate clerk, and Madame Lu all appeared. Madame Lu still wore the formal robes of a titled lady and remained composed. All evidence comes from the Shen family and Pei Jiming, she said coldly. One wishes to clear her father, the other wishes to seize control of Duke Dingguo's household. How can either be trusted? I requested permission to speak. The presiding officials asked, what evidence does Miss Shen have? Qingdai carried forward 3 pots. The first is the medicinal orchid used to kill Madame Pei 20 years ago. The second is the pure heart orchid from the present tribute flower case. The third came from Jingchen Trading House's abandoned warehouse in the Western District. Madame Lu said calmly, plants resemble one another. What does that prove? It proves that the supposed contract from 20 years ago was forged later. I opened the old contract Madame Lu had submitted. It states that the medicinal orchid arrived in the capital from Nanzhou on the 18th day of the 3rd month. But this variety had not yet been successfully cultivated in Nanzhou 20 years ago. Farmers there introduced it only 3 years later. Her expression shifted. Furthermore, the contract is written on pine pattern paper produced by Joji Paper Workshop in the Western District. That workshop opened only 19 years ago. Madame, how could paper that did not exist until 19 years ago record a shipment from 20 years ago? An uproar rose outside the hall. The shopkeeper of Jingchen Trading House trembled violently. The palace gate clerk then testified that Madame Lu threatened his wife and child to force him to exchange the tribute flower. The elderly gardener identified one of Madame Lu's matrons as the woman who personally delivered the poisoned orchid to Madame Pei's courtyard years ago. Madame Lu finally lost her composure. I did it for Jianan. She turned fiercely toward Pei Jiming. You are the legitimate eldest son. You were born with the title waiting for you. What did my son have? If I did not fight for him, he would spend his entire life beneath your feet. Pei Jiming stood at the side of the hall, his expression unchanged. I looked at Madame Lu. You feared your son would be cast aside, so you first killed another person's mother and then tried to kill her son. Your fear was real, but so were the people you harmed. Madame Lu closed her eyes and offered no further defense. In the end, she was sentenced to lifelong imprisonment for killing the first wife, attempting to murder the heir, and framing an official. Her son, Pei Jian, had not directly participated in the killings, but he knew and concealed them. He lost his right of inheritance and was removed from Duke Dingguo's household. Jingchen Trading House was confiscated, and its shopkeeper was exiled. Gu Huaichuan was stripped of his scholarly status and sentenced to exile roughly 1,000 miles away for bribing the driver, staging the carriage incident, assisting in the concealment of poison, and helping forge testimony. When the sentence was pronounced, he suddenly looked at me. Shen Tangning. I did not turn away. If I had not done these things, would you have? No. I knew what he wanted to ask. Even without rebirth, even without those 10 years, I would never again love the Gu Huaichuan whose true face had been exposed that day. Real affection does not begin with deception and survive by taking from the other person. He smiled faintly, looking almost lost. I see. Father's name was cleared, and he returned to office. When he walked out of the Court of Judicial Review, Mother and my brother hurried to meet him. I stood outside the crowd and did not approach at once. Father came to me instead. He looked at me for a long time before saying, "My daughter has grown up." My nose stung. I caused you and Mother much worry before. He did not know which past mistake I meant, but he lifted a hand and patted my shoulder. From now on, do what you truly wish to do. That evening, Pei Jiming escorted me to the Shen residence. When the carriage stopped, he did not mention the distance of the past few days. He only placed the dark iron token before me. The first time I gave you this, it was because I owed you a life. I looked at him, and this time? This time I want you to know that I do not intend to hide my path, my home, or my future from you again. I did not take it. What if I am still afraid of marriage? Pei Jiming was silent for a breath. Then we do not marry. Are you not afraid people will laugh? Many people fail to obtain what they seek. I would only be one more. What if I never agree? Then I will never force you. He pushed the token half an inch closer. What I ask for is your willingness, not a marriage document. My eyes suddenly filled with tears. In my previous life, I knelt before my parents to be allowed to marry Gu Huaichuan. Afterward, I knelt before him again and again to preserve the appearance of a harmonious marriage. I believed love required someone to bow, someone to sacrifice, and someone to surrender her own path. Pei Jiming placed the choice before me. He was willing to wait and willing to accept that I might not choose him. At last, I picked up the token. Accepting this does not mean I agree to marriage. I know, and you may not send a matchmaker tomorrow. I will not. You may not mention it again for 3 months. Pei Jiming nodded. All right. 3 months later, he did not bring a matchmaker. He sent only an invitation to the flower market. On it was one sentence. On the 3rd day of the 3rd month, would you be willing to go with me? On the 3rd day of the 3rd month the following year, the capital was bright with spring. I stood before the mirror while Qingdai arranged my hair. She was no longer the young maid who panicked whenever trouble arose. She managed the new women's floral workshop at Chunxing Nursery, kept precise accounts, and rewarded and disciplined fairly. Even my maternal uncle praised her talent as a manager. Which hairpin will you wear today, miss? The white Lady Banks rose. She smiled. The one Lord Pei sent, or the one the nursery made? The nursery made it, but Lord Pei drew the design. I looked at her through the mirror. Qingdai immediately closed her mouth, though she could not hide her smile. Chunxing Nursery had become one of the capital's largest flower businesses. The Four Seasons floral subscription had grown from 500 subscribing households to 3,000, and the workshop employed nearly 100 women who previously had nowhere to earn a living. Shen went to Jiangnan to study fragrance making and wrote every month. She never asked me to forgive her immediately. She simply sent each new batch of fragrance to the nursery for testing. Recently, she wrote, "Elder sister, I once believed that being chosen by a man proved I had defeated you. Now I understand that the life truly belonging to me does not require defeating anyone," I replied. "Jiangnan has much spring rain. Keep warm. Some fractures never disappear, but new things can still grow beside them." Mother formally transferred 30% of Chunxing Nursery into my name. She said it was not a dowry, it was my own property. Father no longer spoke of choosing a husband for me. Whenever I came home late, he merely frowned and asked, "Have you finished examining the accounts today?" My elder brother passed the metropolitan examination and entered the Hanlin Academy. The Shen family did not avoid every storm simply because I skipped the flower market, but all of us survived, and we lived better than in my previous life. I changed into a pomegranate red outfit. It was not the crabapple red garment I had once chosen so carefully for the market. This one was my own choice. Bright, neatly cut at the sleeves, and practical for riding. When I left the Shen residence, Pei Jiming stood outside. After Madame Lu's conviction, he inherited the title of Duke Dingguo, yet he did not leave the Court of Judicial Review. People in the capital still more often called him Deputy Minister Pei than Duke Dingguo. He wore a dark robe. There was no grand carriage behind him, only 2 horses. "Are we not going to the flower market?" I asked. "The southern market will be crowded today. A carriage will move slowly. Are you certain you want me to ride?" "If Miss Shen is afraid," I took the reins and mounted. "Who said I was afraid?" Amusement flickered in his eyes. We rode side by side toward the southern market. Near the entrance, the crowd thickened and we had to dismount. Colored banners hung along the street. The air mingled the scents of peonies, orchids, greenery, and damp earth. Vendors shouted while children carrying paper flowers ran through the crowd. When I reached the stone bridge, my steps slowed. The carriage incident in my previous life had happened here. Sitting inside the runaway compartment, I first saw Gu Huaichuan extend his hand to me. I believed it would lead me away from danger. In truth, he only pulled me toward a longer disaster. He stopped beside me. He did not ask what I was thinking or urge me onward. He simply waited. I raised my head. It was still the same stone bridge. The street had not changed, but different people sold flowers, different carriages passed, and a different person stood beside me. Most importantly, I was no longer the Shen who could only wait for someone else to save her. I stepped forward, then took another step. As I crossed the bridge, the wind lifted my skirt and I suddenly laughed. Pei Jiming. Yes? So this is only a street. He looked at me. It was always only a street. In my memory, I had turned it into the entrance to fate. Walking across it again, I realized that what people call fate is often only a choice made at one moment. Chunqing Nursery's new shop stood at the far end of the flower market, with a long line outside. The women clerks Qingdai had trained were welcoming customers. Beneath the shop sign hung a smaller wooden board, Woman's Floral Workshop, workers here year-round. I stood across the street and watched for a long time. At a nearby stall, Pei Jiming bought a white Lady Banks rose. The girls selling flowers smiled. Young master, is it for your beloved? Pei Jiming glanced at me. I have not won her yet. Then you should buy several. She dislikes waste. He chose, with great care before holding the flower out to me. Miss Shen. What? Will you allow me to accompany you through the flower market today? I accepted the rose. Only today? He paused. I raised an eyebrow. Deputy Minister Pei is clever when examining cases. Why are you slow now? Understanding finally dawned, and the corners of his lips rose. If you do not find me tiresome, I will come every year. And the marriage? You forbade me to mention it. 3 months have passed. The market remained noisy, suddenly unable to hear anything around us. He looked only at me. Shen Tangnings. Yes, will you marry me? I deliberately said. I was only asking. Once asked, you cannot withdraw it. Are you trying to force a deal, my lord? The owner of Chunqing Nursery taught me that business requires written proof. He took a folded paper from his sleeve. It was a prenuptial agreement. It stated that Chunqing Nursery would remain Shen Tangning's personal property forever. After marriage, I could conduct business freely without interference from Duke Dingguo's household. The parents of both the Shen and Pei families would be supported jointly. Important household decisions would be discussed together, and neither party could use rank, favors, or reputation to coerce the other. The final clause read, if Pei Jiming ever wrongs Shen Tangning, she may leave with all her personal property, and Pei Jiming may not obstruct her. I laughed when I finished reading. Who wrote the last clause? Lord Shen, my father. He summoned me to his study yesterday and added it himself. You agreed? Why would I not? Pei Jiming looked at me, his voice quiet. I want to marry you so we can share a life, not so I can imprison you in Duke Dingguo's residence. My eyes grew warm. The marriage document from my previous life spoke of a wife's obedience and husband and wife as one body. After I entered the Gu family, everything belonging to me was called common marital property. Yet Gu Huaichuan's position, secrets, and choices were never mine. In this life, someone first wrote an escape route into the agreement, then asked whether I wished to move forward. I took the brush from Qingdai and signed my name at the bottom of the agreement. Pei Jiming, yes? Come see the flowers with me next year too. All right, and the year after? All right. What if the Court of Judicial Review has a case? I will finish it early, and if you cannot, I will bring the files and work here. I laughed. He took my hand, and this time I did not pull away. Our wedding did not feature a lavish bridal procession, stretching for miles or shake the entire capital. I brought only my own clothes and books. Chunqing Nursery remained under the Shen family's name, and I traveled there each day to manage it. Pei Jiming's study windows became crowded with every Four Seasons floral subscription plant we sent. He never discarded a single pot. When he worked on cases late into the night, I reviewed accounts at another desk. Some evenings we exchanged scarcely a few sentences, but whenever either of us looked up, the other was there. Later, father asked whether I regretted not going to the flower market that year. I thought for a long time. No. Because you avoided Gu Huaichuan? No. I looked out the window. Pei Jiming stood beside the flower rack, awkwardly removing dead twigs from a jasmine plant. Feeling my gaze, he looked up. Because that was the first day I made a decision for myself. In my previous life, I went to the market and wasted 10 years on one man. In this life, I stayed home and found a true marriage instead. Yet many years later, I finally understood that what truly saved me was not that one absence. It was that from that day onward, I stopped handing myself over to so-called destiny. I learned to investigate the truth behind an encounter before trusting it, protect the work my family had built, bear the consequences of my own choices, And when someone offered me a hand, look clearly into his eyes before deciding whether to take it. On the third day of the third month in another year, Pei Jiming and I entered the flower market. The streets still overflowed with people, horse bells, vendors' calls, and flower fragrance mixed in the air. I could no longer remember where Gu Huaichuan had stood all those years ago. The pain I once believed would never leave me had finally been covered by new memories. Pei Jiming placed a white Lady Banks rose in my hand. What flowers do you wish to see this year? I looked toward the bright spring light at the end of the long street, where thousands of blossoms swayed in the wind, all of them. I took his hand and walked forward. This time, I had not come to meet anyone. I had simply come to see the flowers. Extra Story 1. Whatever Lord Pei raises D's. In the third month after our wedding, I finally discovered something Pei Jiming was bad at. It was not cooking. He had never cooked, so no one could judge whether he was skilled, nor was it sweet talk. He had never been good at that either. Yet on the rare occasions he said something tender, his excessive seriousness made one sincere sentence carry more weight than 10 from anyone else. What he truly could not do was care for flowers. At first, he hid it extremely well. I traveled between Chunxing Nursery and Duke Dingguo's residence every day, and often left early and returned late. The Four Seasons floral subscription plants in his study always seemed to bloom beautifully whenever I saw them. The first month brought jasmine, with green leaves and full buds. The second brought camellias, their petals vivid without a single dead leaf. The third brought a kumquat tree covered in bright golden fruit. For a time I believed he was secretly an expert gardener. Then one day, because a temporary matter arose in the nursery's accounting office, I returned to the residence 4 hours earlier than usual. As I approached the study, I heard Chongqing lower his voice. "My lord, this pot is failing too." Pei Jiming asked gravely, "Did I not just water it today? That is exactly why it is failing. Can a flower fear water?" Chongqing was silent for a long moment. "I do not know whether flowers fear water, but you have watered it 5 times today." I stopped outside the door. Pei Jiming's voice came again. "Yesterday the leaves turned yellow. The gardener said it lacked water. He said to give it a small amount." "How much is a small amount?" "Half a dipper." "I used half a dipper." "You used it 5 times. 5 half-dippers are still half-dippers?" Chongqing appeared defeated by the logic. Unable to hold back, I opened the door. In the center of the study stood a half-drowned kumquat tree. Water covered the floor beneath the pot. Pei Jiming still held half a dipper, while Chongqing crouched nearby, trying to absorb the excess with cloth. Both looked up at me. The silence was painfully awkward. I looked at the kumquat, then at Pei Jiming. "What are you doing?" He answered calmly, "Watering the plant." "I can see that. It lacked water." I approached and touched the soil. It was so waterlogged that I could squeeze water from it. "It does not lack water." "Then why are the leaves yellow?" "Because the roots are nearly rotten from soaking." Pei Jiming frowned. "I watered it only 5 times. Chongqing lowered his head, shoulders shaking. I struggled to suppress a smile. "Where are the jasmine and camellias from the previous months?" "The jasmine's flowering season ended." "Where is the pot?" "Sent to the rear garden to recover." "And the camellia?" "Also recovering." I turned to Chongqing. He refused to meet my eyes. "Tell me the truth." Chongqing dropped to his knees. "Forgive me, madam." His Grace left the jasmine in the sun until it died and froze the camellia. Every Four Seasons floral subscription plant survives no more than 10 days after arriving. "Then why have they always looked healthy whenever I saw them?" Chongqing whispered. "We bought replacements." I looked at Pei Jiming. "You bought replacements?" He set down the dipper. "You look at the flowers longer when they are blooming well, so whenever one dies, you buy an identical one?" "Yes." "Has this kumquat been replaced too?" Chongqing raised 3 fingers. 3 pots. Pei Jiming glanced at him. Chongqing silently lowered 2 fingers. 1 pot, he corrected. I laughed despite myself. "How many pots exactly?" "This is the 4th. I looked at the kumquat tree, which was clearly nearing the end of its life, and could not decide whether to pity the plant or the silver spent replacing it. "If you cannot care for flowers, why not let the gardeners do it? Why should anyone else care for my own subscription plant?" He sounded entirely justified, leaving me without a reply. "When you question prisoners at the Court of Judicial Review, do you also give them water this way? A prisoner will not die from drinking 5 bowls of water. That is because you do not pour all 5 down at once." Pei Jiming considered the point. "True." I pressed a hand to my forehead. That day, I personally taught him the basics of caring for the kumquat. Wait until the soil is dry before watering. What counts as dry? Push a finger about an inch into the soil. If it no longer feels damp, then water it. Pei Jiming nodded with the seriousness of hearing crucial evidence. "How much water each time?" "Stop when water first begins to seep from the bottom of the pot. If it drains too quickly, the soil is too loose. If none drains, the soil may be blocked. What if it drains on one side? Closed my eyes. Pei Jiming, yes? You should give the flour to Chongqing. Chongqing shook his head wildly. No. I have been extremely busy with official duties. Pei Jiming looked at him coldly. The next day, Chongqing was sent outside the city to investigate an old case and reportedly would not return for 7 days. I thought Pei Jiming might finally give up. Instead, the next morning I found him crouching beside the kumquat pot, testing the soil carefully with his finger. He tested the left side, then the right, and finally took out paper and brush to record. 26th day of the 3rd month. Soil damp. Do not water. I watched from the doorway for a while. You are keeping records? Absence does not lie. This is gardening, not an interrogation. The principle is the same. Surprisingly, that kumquat survived. In autumn it produced 3 small fruits. Pei Jiming picked the largest and placed it before me. For you. I lifted it and smelled it. Can it be eaten? I peeled it and tasted half. It was so sour that tears nearly sprang from my eyes. Pei Jiming immediately asked, is it poisonous? No. Then why are you crying? I held the remaining half to his lips. Taste it. Without suspicion, he bit into it. His brows tightened instantly. I finally burst out laughing. He watched me and slowly swallowed the painfully sour fruit. Is it amusing? A little. Shen Tangning. Yes? Next year, cancel kumquats from the 4 Seasons floral subscription. No. Why? I want to see how sour a fruit Deputy Minister Pei can grow next time. He was silent, then said, order 2 extra pots. From then on, a volume titled Notes on the Care of Flowers and Trees appeared in the Deputy Minister's study at the Court of Judicial Review. According to Chongqing, Pei Jiming had never written case notes in such detail. At the very top of the first page, 8 neat characters read, do not listen to Shen Tangning. Extra story 2. Lord Shen examines his son-in-law. During the first New Year after our marriage, I took Pei Jiming home for the reunion meal. Father appeared calm, but had been preparing for 3 days. First, he ordered the kitchen to remove every overly sweet dish Pei Jiming disliked. Then he instructed the steward to prepare his favorite Longjing tea. After doing all this, he specially warned Mother, do not let him know, I asked. Mother smiled. If you care about your son-in-law, simply say so. Father's face remained stern. I am only treating a guest properly. Then why did you ask which fish he prefers? Etiquette. And why did you have the padded chair moved from the study to the main hall? His old injury has only just healed, and he should not sit for long on a hard stool. Why did you tell the kitchen to use less ginger? Father finally became annoyed. Why are you talking so much today? Mother turned away, shoulders shaking with laughter. I believed Father was merely reluctant to admit his concern. Only after Pei Jiming arrived did I discover he had prepared an entire examination for his son-in-law. The first test was chess. Father was not among the capital's greatest players, but his style was steady. He enjoyed extending a game until an opponent lost patience. Before Pei Jiming sat down, I whispered, if Father strokes his beard 3 times in succession, he has set a trap. Pei Jiming asked, what if he strokes it twice? He is still hesitating, and once? He simply thinks his beard looks impressive. Father coughed from across the board. Ninger, observers do not speak during a game. I immediately fell silent. They played for an hour. Father stroked his beard 3 times, but Pei Jiming did not enter the trap. Instead, with his final move, he captured 16 of Father's black stones. Father stared at the board, his face growing darker. I hurriedly signaled Pei Jiming with my eyes. He glanced at me, then said, Father-in-law is the superior player. I concede. Father looked up. You already won. The result is settled. You allowed me the advantage, Father snorted. A win is a win. If you deliberately yield, do you think I cannot bear defeat? He fell silent. I lowered my head and drank tea. Father added, still, you know how to preserve an elder's dignity. That shows filial regard. Pei Jiming looked at me. His expression clearly asked, does your father want me to win or lose? I answered with my eyes, he does not know either. The second test was drinking. Father brought out pear blossom wine he had treasured for years. Pei Jiming rarely drank, but could not easily refuse. After 3 cups, Father's expression did not change. After 5, Pei Jiming still sat upright. After 7, Mother kicked Father beneath the table. That is enough. Father said, what are a few cups to a man? I reminded him. Pei Jiming must go to the Court of Judicial Review tomorrow. Can the Deputy Minister of the Court of Judicial Review not handle this little wine? Pei Jiming lifted his cup. I can. I pressed his hand down. You cannot. I can. The last time you drank 3 cups, you sat beside the bed at midnight and interrogated the clothes rack for eavesdropping on our conversation. The table went silent. My brother sprayed out his tea. Father stared at Pei Jiming. Your tolerance is that poor? The tips of Pei Jiming's ears reddened, though he remained composed. That night, I simply mistook it for someone else. You also ordered Chongqing to take the clothes rack to the Court of Judicial Review and interrogate it all night, I added. My brother collapsed over the table laughing. Father held himself for a moment, then turned away and coughed. The drinking test ended there. The third test was literary criticism. Father asked Pei Jiming to review a policy essay my brother had painstakingly written. My brother, who had been enjoying the spectacle, immediately lost his smile. Father, why use my essay to test brother-in-law? You may listen and learn as well. After reading it, Pei Jiming identified 3 weak arguments and 2 incorrect allusions. My brother's face shifted between red and pale. Father said sternly, Yanshu, did you hear? He gritted his teeth. Yes, rewrite it, it is New Year. Does New Year mean you need not study? My brother glared at Pei Jiming, gathered his essay and left. Pei Jiming asked quietly, did I offend him? No. He looked as though he wished to duel me. He looks that way every year when Father critiques his writing. Then why did he glare at me? Before, only Father criticized him. Now there are 2 of you. He was silent for a moment. Next time, I will say the essay is excellent. Then Father will order you to rewrite it with him. He stopped speaking. After the reunion meal, Father began the final test. He called Pei Jiming alone into the study. I tried to follow, but Father shut the door in my face. Men are speaking. Do not listen secretly. I stood outside. Father, if you speak loudly enough, I will not need to listen secretly. Silence came from within. Then Father closed the door more firmly. I waited with Mother in the covered corridor. 1 hour later, Pei Jiming emerged with a complicated expression. I hurried over. What did Father say? He made me swear an oath. What oath? If I ever wrong you, I will leave with nothing. I nodded. That clause is already in the prenuptial agreement. He added 2 more. What are they? I may not restrict your management of Chunxing Nursery, and I may not use officers of the Court of Judicial Review to investigate trivial household matters for Duke Dingguo's residence. I paused. What does the second mean? Pei Jiming looked at me without expression. Father-in-law heard that last month I ordered Chongqing to investigate the pear blossom pastries you hid. I suppressed a smile. Why did you investigate my pastries? You said they were finished. They were. Chongqing found 2 boxes in a cabinet. I was saving them to eat slowly. You hid them behind the account books. Because I feared you would confiscate them. I do not eat sweets, but you confiscate mine on the grounds that they are unhealthy. Pei Jiming stopped speaking. Father came out of the study. Have you finished? I asked. We have. He looked toward Pei Jiming. I am reasonably satisfied with you today. Pei Jiming bowed seriously. Thank you, father-in-law. Father nodded and walked away. After 2 steps, he stopped. Next year, do not deliberately yield at chess. Yes, of course that does not mean you will win. Yes, and improve your tolerance for wine. Father, I protested. Why must he practice drinking? Father glanced at me. A son-in-law of the Shen family cannot lose to a clothes rack. That evening, after we returned home, Pei Jiming sat beside the bed and thought, next year I will win the chess game. And the wine? I will practice. I immediately became wary. How? 1 cup each day, and then continue interrogating the clothes rack? I will choose something else. What? He looked toward the flower vase in the corner. I silently stood and moved the vase, clothes rack, folding screen and candlesticks out of the room. Pei Jiming asked, what are you doing? Protecting the Court of Judicial Review's manpower. What do you mean? So Chongqing will not have to escort furniture there in the middle of the night again. Extra story 3. The little dumpling's great first birthday case. In the 3rd year of our marriage, I gave birth to a daughter. Pei Jiming named her Pei Ji. He said he hoped she would understand her own wishes throughout her life, and never live only for other people's expectations. Father approved greatly, but Mother thought the name too serious. Privately, she always called the child Yuanyuan. The reason was simple. The baby had a round face at birth, a round face at 1 month, and an even rounder face on her first birthday. Pei Jiming did not approve. Her name is Ji Yi. Mother held the child and coaxed, Yuanyuan, look at grandmother. The little dumpling immediately smiled, revealing 4 tiny teeth. He fell silent. I patted his shoulder. Accept it. She will believe her name is Yuanyuan. Then let it be her family nickname. No one asked for my permission. You did not ask for her permission before naming her Ji Yi either. Pei Jiming looked down at his daughter. The little dumpling clutched his collar and drooled. After a moment, he compromised. At home, she may be called Wanyuan. On Ji's first birthday, elders from both the Shen family and Duke Dingguo's household came for the traditional object selection ceremony. The table was covered with items. Father placed a copy of the Analects. It would be best if she grows learned and principled. Mother set down a small abacus. If she understands accounts, no one will cheat her. My brother added a writing brush. When she writes essays, she must not be like her mother, whose one character in a ledger occupies the space of 3 normal ones. I glared at him. My handwriting is concise. The accountants have to guess every time. Pei Jiming placed his deputy minister's command token on the table. So she will distinguish right from wrong. I immediately removed it. No. Why? It is too heavy. It could fall on her foot. Place it farther away. This is a first birthday ceremony. If she chooses the Court of Judicial Review token, will you send her to investigate a case when she is only 1? It is symbolic. A wooden badge would be equally symbolic. After considering it, Pei Jiming ordered Chongqing to bring a spare waist badge. I removed that as well. This one literally says Court of Judicial Review. She cannot read. She can chew. After both families argued for half the day, the table finally held books, an abacus, a brush, a pair of wooden flower scissors, a jade pendant, cakes, a rouge box, and a small wooden hammer. Little Ji was placed in the center. Everyone held their breath. She looked at the book, then at the abacus. Father coaxed softly, Huaichuan, take the book. Pei Jiming corrected him at once. Ji. Mother clapped. Huaichuan, come to grandmother. The little dumpling crawled 2 steps toward mother, then noticed the cakes and turned toward them. I hurriedly said, the cakes do not count. My brother laughed. Why not? They mean she will never lack food or clothing. Ji grabbed a cake and tried to bite it. It was too hard, so she threw it aside. Next, she crawled toward the abacus. Mother beamed. She truly resembles Ninger. Just as her small hand reached the beads, their clatter startled her. She turned and lunged toward the brush instead. My brother became excited. She resembles me. Ji grabbed the brush, dipped it into the ink left in the nearby inkstone, and streaked it across his new robe. His smile froze. She did that deliberately, did she not? She is 1 year old. What malicious intention could she have? While we spoke, Ji crawled toward the wooden flower scissors. I quickly stopped her. That does not count either. It is dangerous. Pei Jiming frowned. Why place scissors in the ceremony? Qingdai explained. They are made of wood. Wood can still hurt her. We removed them. The number of items on the table kept shrinking until only the book, abacus, jade pendant, rouge box, and wooden hammer remained. Ji sat in the middle and seemed uninterested in all of them. Then she noticed the real Court of Judicial Review token at Pei Jiming's waist. Her eyes brightened. She scrambled over as fast as she could and hugged his leg. Pei Jiming rarely showed such open satisfaction. She chose the token. She may only want you to pick her up, I reminded him. He lifted her. Ji immediately reached down and tore the token from his belt before anyone could stop her. Father nodded in satisfaction. It appears she will also distinguish right from wrong. A hint of pride appeared in Pei Jiming's eyes. The next instant, the little dumpling flung the token into a nearby flower pot. It landed upright in the wet soil. Everyone fell silent. Ji clapped and laughed until she rocked backward. My brother was the first to lose control. I see no sign of distinguishing right from wrong. She is already skilled at sabotaging official business. Pei Jiming handed the child to me and, expressionless, retrieved his token from the pot. Chongqing fought laughter, shoulders shaking. My lord, should I open a case? Pei Jiming looked at him coldly. The suspect is 1 year old. How would you do so? Chongqing answered seriously. We can record it now and question her when she grows up. I bent over laughing with Ji in my arms. Pei Jiming cleaned the token and returned. Is it that amusing? A little. She threw an official token into the soil. It shows she understands that authority cannot remain high above the people. It must come down into the same soil they live on. Father agreed. Ninger's explanation is excellent. My brother pointed to the ink streak across his chest. Then, what did she mean by drawing on my clothes with a brush? I examined it. It means writing should not remain only on paper. It must stay close to real life. Mother laughed until tears came. Pei Jiming looked down at his daughter. Little Ji reached out with an ink-covered hand and pressed it against his face. A black handprint appeared on his left cheek. The room fell silent again. Pei Jiming closed his eyes. Pei Ji. Hearing her name, the little dumpling grinned and leaned forward to kiss him. The ink mark spread even wider. I collapsed against mother, laughing. Pei Jiming held his daughter with an ink handprint on his cheek, his expression as grave as if presiding over a major case. How should this matter be handled? I wiped away my tears. The evidence is conclusive and the suspect has confessed. When did she confess? She kissed you. That is a confession? She attempted to please the presiding official and seek leniency. Pei Jiming looked at the babbling child in his arms and finally sighed. Then, we will show leniency. How lenient? She will receive 1 fewer rice cake tonight. Ji seemed to understand. Her mouth turned down and she was about to cry. Pei Jiming immediately changed his decision. Forget it. I raised an eyebrow. Deputy Minister Pei, are you showing favoritism? The evidence is insufficient. The handprint on your face is not evidence? It could have been made by someone else. Everyone saw it. The witnesses may have colluded. My brother slapped the table and laughed. Deputy Minister Pei, I never thought I would see the day. Pei Jiming glanced at him. I heard the Hanlin Academy recently lost a batch of official documents. My brother's laughter stopped abruptly. I suddenly remembered an essay I have not finished. I will leave first. He turned and fled. Father called after him. Today is Wanyuan's first birthday. What essay are you going to write? Amid the room's laughter, little Ji lay across Pei Jiming's shoulder and pulled his hair. I went over and wiped the ink from his face. Deputy Minister Pei, yes? What did our daughter truly select today? He looked at her, then at the mud in the flower pot. Leverage against me. Later, that became the entire family's conclusion. Pei Jiming, Deputy Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, examined countless difficult cases but was entirely helpless against his daughter. At 3, she broke an inkstone. He said it had fallen by itself. At 5, she stripped every leaf from the orchids in his study. He claimed the orchids were merely shedding their old leaves for the season. At 7, she secretly rode away on his horse. He said the child showed admirable courage. Unable to endure any more, I asked, Deputy Minister Pei, where is your fairness and strictness? He was carving a small wooden sword for his daughter and did not raise his head. Today is a rest day. On rest days, reason does not apply. Household matters do not fall under the jurisdiction of the Court of Judicial Review. Little Ji poked her head through the door. Mother, whose jurisdiction are they under? Pei Jiming finally looked up. Your mother's. Ji turned and ran. Father, run. Mother is opening a case. Pei Jiming picked up the wooden sword and truly followed her outside. I stood in the study, watching the large figure and the small one flee at remarkable speed, and slapped my ledger onto the table. Pei Jiming! His calmed voice came from the courtyard. Ji, run faster. I lifted my skirt and chased them. Spring sunlight filled the corridor. Beneath the flower trellis, father and daughter laughed as they hid behind a pillar. Suddenly, I laughed too. In my previous life, I never imagined that a complete and happy life did not have to mean silk and luxury, or a husband and wife treating one another with formal courtesy. It could also be a flower nearly killed by too much care, an examination for a son-in-law that no one truly won, and a little dumpling who threw the Court of Judicial Review's token into a flower pot. Laughter continued through the courtyard. And this life was still very long. Thank you for supporting Panda. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories. Now, let's begin story 2. The wind in the 12th lunar month cut across my face like a knife. I curled up against the wall at a street corner, wrapped in a torn cotton coat I had dug out of some rubbish heap. My hands and feet were numb with cold, yet my heart felt even colder than the winter air. I had just confirmed one impossible truth. I had been reborn and returned to the year when I was 4. Memories of my previous life flooded this tiny body like a rising tide, making my temples throb. I remembered the red palace walls, the bitter taste of poisoned wine, and the bodies of my loyal family wrapped in straw mats and thrown beyond the city gates. Rain had been falling when the wild dogs gathered around them. My name was Shen Qingqi, daughter of Shen Ting, the former chief grand secretary. I entered the palace at 16 and was sentenced to death at 18 on the charge of treason. The woman who destroyed my entire family was still seated securely in the imperial palace as noble consort Liu. Little girl. A gentle voice came from above me. I raised my head. Against the light I saw an elegant, dignified face. The woman wore a plain, refined palace robe, with only a single white magnolia hairpin at her temple, yet her bearing was so commanding that no one dared look directly at her. A large procession followed behind her, eunuchs, palace maids, and sword-bearing guards. I recognized her. She was Empress Wei. In my previous life, she had treated me neither especially well nor badly. She was one of the few honorable people in the harem and had never made things difficult for me. Later, however, when noble consort Liu rose to power, even the empress could barely protect herself. She was framed for having an affair with an outside minister, neglected for more than half a year, and eventually lost the emperor's favor. Why is this child alone on the street? The empress crouched and used a handkerchief to wipe the dirt from my face. Where are your parents? I looked into her eyes and calculated quickly. At this point in my former life, the Shen family had already been destroyed. I should have died on the road to exile, but someone had rescued me, and after many twists and turns, I had ended up here. In my previous life, I had collapsed in the snow and been taken in by a kind woman. She had saved my life, but because of that, I had also missed too many opportunities. This time I had to seize the chance in front of me. My parents are both gone, I said. My voice was thin and weak, like a newborn kitten's. The empress's gaze softened. She had no children. After many years in the palace, she had never conceived. Although the emperor respected her, he rarely stayed in her palace. No one but her lived in the vast central palace. I knew where her heart was most vulnerable. "What is your name?" she asked. I opened my mouth. The 3 words Shen Qingxi were now a death warrant. Only 3 years had passed since the entire Shen family had been executed, and many eyes at court were still watching anything connected to the old case. If I gave my real name, I might not survive the night. But I did not want to invent a random name either. "Zhao," I said. My mother used to call me Zhao. That was true. When my mother was alive, she always called me that in private. She said my eyes shone like stars and could drive away the darkness in a person's heart. After I entered the palace in my previous life, no one ever called me that again. The empress paused, then smiled. "Zhao," she repeated softly. "It is a lovely name." She stood and glanced at the senior palace matron beside her. The matron immediately understood and came forward to lift me into her arms. "Your Majesty," the matron murmured. "Bringing someone from outside the palace back with us may be against the rules." The empress gave her one look, and the woman fell silent. "When I make a decision, it is not for others to lecture me about rules." The empress gathered my ragged coat more closely around me. This child and I were destined to meet. "Take her back to the palace and care for her properly." I rested against the matron's shoulder and buried my face so no one could see my expression. Only one thought remained in my mind. It had worked. The carriage rocked gently as it passed through the palace gates. I was taken away to bathe and change. It took 3 tubs of hot water to wash all the grime from my skin. Once I had been dressed in clean clothes, the palace maids looked at me differently. "She is so pretty once she is clean," one whispered to another. "Like an immortal child in a painting." "Exactly. Her skin is so fair and soft, and she even has dimples when she smiles." I glanced at myself in the bronze mirror. This face was indeed lovable. My eyes were large and round, my lashes long and curled, my nose small and straight, and my lips naturally pale pink. In the palace, I looked like a living good luck charm. The empress was clearly pleased as well. She had the maids arrange my hair into 2 small buns tied with red ribbons and dress me in an apricot-colored padded jacket trimmed at the collar with white rabbit fur. The pale fur made my face look even cleaner and cuter. "Come," she said. "Mother will take you to the Eastern Palace." She took my hand. My steps faltered. The Eastern Palace was where the Crown Prince lived. In my previous life, I had seen Crown Prince Xiao Jingheng many times at court, at palace banquets, and on the day I was sentenced to death, he had come to read the imperial decree. His face had shown no emotion, like an iceberg that would never melt. When I entered the palace at 16, he had been 17 and already the crown prince whose influence extended throughout the court. Noble consort Liu's son had fought him openly and covertly for the succession for many years, but had never managed to defeat him. I died before learning whether he ultimately ascended the throne. "What is wrong?" the empress asked, looking down at me. "Nothing." I lifted my face and gave her a sweet smile. Since I intended to survive in this palace, I had to secure the crown prince as my protector. The Eastern Palace was quieter than I had imagined. There were no lavish floral decorations and no steady flow of palace servants. The enormous residence lay in silence, with only a faint light glowing from the study. When the empress led me inside, the crown prince was seated behind his desk, writing. At 13, his features had not fully matured, but the shape of the man he would become was already visible. Sharp brows, a high nose, tightly pressed thin lips, and a cold remoteness that kept everyone at a distance. He wore a black robe with narrow sleeves, revealing a section of his wrist and clearly defined knuckles. "Jingheng," the empress called. The crown prince put down his brush, rose and bowed. "Mother." Even his voice was cold like a spring in winter. The empress guided me forward. "This is the child I found outside the palace today. Her name is Zhao. From now on, she will be your younger sister, Zhao. Call him Brother Jingheng." I looked at the icy young man before me. The last time I had seen him in my previous life, he had read the decree ordering my death. He stood before me and recited that grand righteous-sounding document without expression, then turned and left without looking at me even once. At the time, I had hated him. Now I understood that he had merely been carrying out an imperial order. The ones who truly wanted me dead were the emperor, noble consort Liu, and the entire court that had no place for the Shen family. "Brother," I said, lifting my face and using my softest, sweetest voice. The crown prince looked down at me and I looked back. His eyes were so dark that they resembled a deep pool, revealing nothing. After a long silence, he put down the brush, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of me. Though only 13, he was already tall. He bent down, slipped both hands beneath my arms, and lifted me from the floor. Startled, I instinctively clutched his collar. His embrace was warmer than I had expected. "Mother," the Crown Prince said with the same calm tone one might use to comment on the weather, "she will live in the Eastern Palace." As Empress every servant in the room froze with her. Fuan, the Crown Prince's personal eunuch, opened his mouth so wide that his jaw nearly dropped. "Your Highness, that would not be proper." The Crown Prince glanced at him. Fuan immediately closed his mouth. "Jinghing," the Empress said, "Are you certain?" "I had planned to raise the child in the Central Palace." "The Central Palace is far from the Eastern Palace," he replied. "Going back and forth would be inconvenient." Inconvenient for what, he did not explain. Yet his arms held me securely, as though he feared I might fall. I rested my chin on his shoulder and caught a faint scent of pine. His shoulders were still narrow. He was only a 13-year-old boy, not yet the broad, steady man I remembered from my former life. Even so, for one brief moment, I had the illusion that as long as I held on to him, I would be safe. "Very well." The Empress laughed, amusement in her voice. "Since the Crown Prince has spoken, I cannot very well refuse him. Zhaozhao may live in the Eastern Palace. If she needs anything, you can see to it yourself." The Crown Prince inclined his head. "Thank you, Mother." After the Empress left, the Eastern Palace returned to silence. The Crown Prince placed me on a chair, sat behind his desk again, and picked up his brush. He wrote while I watched. A 4-year-old body tired easily. Before long, my eyelids began to droop, but I forced myself to stay awake because I was studying him. His handwriting was beautiful, upright, and forceful, far beyond what one would expect from a boy of 13. His fingers were long, his knuckles faintly pale around the brush, as though he was exerting more strength than necessary. His lashes were long as well, casting a small shadow across his face whenever he lowered his eyes. "If you are tired, go to sleep," he suddenly said without looking up. I blinked. "Aren't you tired, brother?" His brush paused. He seemed unaccustomed to hearing me call him brother. "I still have memorials to read." He turned slightly. "Fuan, take the commandery princess to rest." Fuan hurried forward and was about to take my hand when the Crown Prince spoke again. "Prepare a side chamber, the one closest to my rooms." Fuan looked as though he had seen a ghost, but he did not dare ask questions. He answered promptly and led me away. Lying beneath the soft bedding, I finally had time to sort through the day. I had been reborn. I had entered the palace. I was now living in the Eastern Palace. The Empress treated me kindly because she had no child of her own. I still did not know why the Crown Prince had kept me, but it certainly was not because he liked me. There had been no warmth in the way he looked at me. He had regarded me like an object that needed to be properly placed. That was all right, I could wait. I had survived 2 years in the imperial harem in my previous life. I knew what kind of place this was. Everyone schemed against everyone else. Every sentence could conceal a blade. Previously, I had lost because I was unguarded. I believed that if I behaved properly and kept to myself, I would live peacefully. The truth proved that those who merely behaved themselves often died first. I would not make the same mistake again. Just as I was drifting to sleep, the door opened softly. The footsteps were light, but I recognized them as the Crown Prince's. He stood beside the bed for a while. I did not open my eyes. Then he reached out and pulled the quilt I had kicked away back over me. His movements were awkward, as though he had never done such a thing. The quilt lay crooked, with one corner still dragging on the floor, but he appeared satisfied. After another moment, he turned and left, closing the door gently behind him. I opened my eyes in the darkness and stared at the canopy overhead. I suddenly wanted to laugh. "Your Highness, it seemed you were not quite as cold as you looked." On my 3rd day in the Eastern Palace, the entire imperial palace learned something extraordinary. The Crown Prince had taken a younger sister into his household. The news spread faster than I had expected. On the morning of the 4th day, the maids had only just pulled me from my warm bed and finished washing and dressing me when hurried footsteps sounded outside. "Where is my little sister? Where is my sister?" The door was thrown open, and a spirited young man charged inside. I recognized him as eldest Prince Xiao Jingyu. His mother was Consort De, and his maternal relatives came from the household of the Northern Garrison General. He had grown up at the frontier and was not brought back to the capital until he was 12. His bold, open nature was the exact opposite of the Crown Prince's cold reserve. In my previous life, he had competed with the Crown Prince for the succession. Noble Consort Liu eventually found an opening, framed him for treason, had him reduced to a commoner, and kept him confined until his death. By then, I had already been confined to the cold palace. I heard the news from one of the eunuchs guarding me on my final night there. Oh, the eldest prince spotted me at once, his eyes lighting like lamps. He strode over, crouched with both hands on his knees, and examined me from every angle. So adorable. He pinched my cheek, like a little doll from a New Year painting. Your Highness, mind your hands. But in this life I was Shen Zhao, a 4-year-old child, so I could only blink at him and look bewildered. What is your name? The eldest prince leaned so close that the tip of his nose nearly touched mine. Zhao, I answered in a soft, babyish voice. Zhao Zhao, he repeated. Then he swept me into his arms and spun me in a circle. What a lovely name. Little sister, come back to my palace. I have delicious food and fun things there. It is far more interesting than the Eastern Palace. The spinning made me dizzy, and I clutched his collar. Despite his youth, he had already developed formidable strength from growing up at the frontier. Eldest brother. An icy voice came from the doorway. The crown prince stood there, his expression dark with displeasure. Put her down. The eldest prince turned with me, still in his arms, and grinned at him. Why? Just because you found a younger sister first, does that make her yours? Mother found her, so she is everyone's younger sister. Why should she live only in the Eastern Palace? The crown prince said nothing. He walked over and took me directly from the eldest prince's arms with one swift, decisive motion, as though reclaiming something that had always belonged to him. First come, first served, he said. What do you mean, first come, first served? The eldest prince protested. By age, I am the eldest brother. A younger sister should follow her eldest brother. You keep hunting dogs in your palace. They do not bite people. You also keep a hawk. The hawk stays in a cage. The crown prince looked at him in silence, then said, I do not trust you with her. The eldest prince's face flushed red with fury. Xiao Jingheng, what is that supposed to mean? Do you think I cannot take care of one child? The crown prince had already carried me back behind his desk. He settled me on his knees, loosely circled one arm around my waist, picked up his brush with the other hand, and resumed reading memorials. He did not look at the eldest prince again. Did you come to the Eastern Palace only to steal her? He asked without lifting his head. Steal her? That sounds terrible. The eldest prince sprawled into a nearby chair and crossed one leg over the other. I came to deliver gifts. He clapped his hands. 2 eunuchs immediately entered carrying large and small bundles. These are candied apricots sent from the frontier. They are sweeter than the palace ones, he said, arranging the items one by one. And this is a little bow I used when I was a child. Little sister can play with it. And this little tiger skin blanket will keep her warm in winter. I studied the gifts. The candied apricots were top quality. The small bow was clearly made for a child, and the tiger skin blanket had glossy, carefully selected fur. The eldest prince seemed careless and boisterous, but he was surprisingly thoughtful. Thank you, brother Jingyu. I smiled sweetly. He immediately clutched his chest and leaned backward with exaggerated distress. I cannot bear it. You are too adorable. Little sisters, smile again. Whatever you want, I will give it to you. The crown prince's brush paused. He lowered his eyes to me just as I looked up at him. Our gazes met. He said nothing, but the arm around my waist seemed to tighten slightly. Do you have anything else to do? He asked the eldest prince. Of course. The eldest prince answered with perfect confidence. I came to play with my little sister today. Thus, everyone in the Eastern Palace witnessed a remarkable scene that day. The crown prince sat behind his desk reading memorials, with a little girl on his knees. The eldest prince crouched on the floor and shook a rattle drum, using every trick he knew to make her laugh. Although the crown prince remained expressionless, he occasionally lowered his eyes to the child and drew her closer against his chest, as though silently declaring ownership. Fuan stood in a corner and silently made a mental note of the scene. The crown prince and the eldest prince had officially begun competing for Commandery Princess Jiaoning's affection. After the eldest prince left, the Eastern Palace returned to its usual quiet. His gifts covered half a table, bringing a touch of ordinary warmth into the austere study. The crown prince placed me on a chair and went to inspect them. He lifted the small bow, tested the string, and frowned. Too stiff, it will hurt her hands. He set it aside. Then he opened the packet of candied apricots, smelled them, broke off a small piece, and tasted it. Too sweet, it will damage her teeth. That was set aside as well. Finally, he picked up the tiger skin blanket and turned it over repeatedly. Apparently unable to find any fault, he spread it across my legs. This one may stay. Watching him complete this entire inspection, I nearly laughed. Your Highness, you were not checking the gifts, you were plainly jealous. Brother, I tugged his sleeve. He looked down. Don't you like the things Brother Jingyu gave me? I asked innocently, tilting my head. I did not say I disliked them. Then why can't I eat the candied apricots? It will damage your teeth. Only one? No. Half of one? No. I pushed out my lower lip and looked ready to cry. At last his expression changed. His brows drew together, as though he were facing an exceptionally difficult problem. "1," he finally compromised. "I will watch you eat it." He selected the smallest piece from the packet and held it to my mouth. I opened my lips and ate it. The candied apricot was indeed very sweet, with the pleasant chewiness unique to apricot flesh. Each bite filled my mouth with fruity fragrance. "Is it good?" the Crown Prince asked. I nodded. He watched me for a moment, then extended his thumb and gently wiped a speck of sugar from the corner of my mouth. His touch was so light that it seemed he feared breaking something fragile. "If you want sweets in the future," he said, "tell me, I will get them for you." My heart missed a beat. No one had ever said such a thing to me in my previous life. My father was constantly occupied with state affairs, and my mother was frail and often ill. From childhood, I knew I had to be sensible and avoid causing trouble. After entering the palace, I became even more cautious, terrified that one wrong step would destroy me. No one had ever told me, "If you want something, tell me. I will get it for you." I lowered my head and buried my face in the tiger skin blanket so the Crown Prince would not see my expression. The fur was soft and carried a faint animal scent. It muffled every sound, including the sudden sting behind my nose. That night I had a nightmare. I dreamed of the final day of my previous life. Noble Consort Liu stood before me holding a cup of poisoned wine, smiling with graceful cruelty. "Shen Qingqi, do you think being the legitimate daughter of the Chief Grand Secretary makes you special?" Her voice was soft and gentle, as though soothing a child. "I brought down your father, and I arranged your death as well. When you reach the underworld, remember to tell him that he blocked my path and deserved what happened." I struggled to lunge at her, but my hands and feet were bound. The poisoned wine was forced down my throat. A burning pain spread from my throat all the way through my internal organs. I died with my eyes open because I wanted to remember her face, even into another life. "Zhao Zhao," someone was calling me. "Zhao Zhao, wake up!" I opened my eyes abruptly. Tears blurred my sight so badly that I could not see. I only felt someone lift me from the bed and awkwardly pat my back. "Did you have a nightmare?" The Crown Prince's voice came from above me. It took a long moment before I could make out his face. He wore only a white inner robe, and his hair hung loose, showing that he had hurried directly from bed. Candlelight softened his normally severe features. His brows were furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line, and he looked almost helpless. "Why are you crying?" he asked. His tone remained cool, but the hand patting my back never stopped. I buried my face against his chest and cried quietly for a while. A 4-year-old body could not control its tears, though the adult soul inside it knew when to stop. Soon I suppressed the sobs, although hiccups still shook me. The Crown Prince did not release me. He held me while sitting beside the bed for so long that I thought he would say nothing more. Then he spoke. "I had nightmares when I was young too." I went still. He lowered his head until his chin rested lightly against my hair. "I dreamed of my mother," he said, so softly that it seemed he feared the wind might hear. "She died when I was 3. I remember almost nothing, only a scar on her hand. She cut herself while peeling a pear for me. Whenever I dreamed of her afterward, I tried to see her face clearly, but I never could." He fell silent for a moment. "So do not cry, you still have someone beside you." I tightened my grip on his robe. Moonlight slipped through the window and spread a thin layer of silver across the floor. I listened to his steady heartbeat, each beat seeming to tell me the same thing. "Do not be afraid. I am here." Life in the Eastern Palace was more peaceful than I had expected. The Crown Prince assigned 2 personal maids to me, Kaiwei and Kaiping. Both had served in the Eastern Palace for years. They were efficient, discreet, and attentive to every detail of my life. Every morning before leaving for court, the Crown Prince came to glance inside chamber. If I was still asleep, he stood at the doorway for a moment and left. If I was awake, he entered with a stern expression and asked whether I had kicked away my quilt during the night. I always said no. He would nod in satisfaction and depart. Later, Kaiwei told me that every night he sent Fuan to check twice and make sure I had not thrown off my covers. "The Crown Prince truly cares for you, Your Highness," Kaiwei said while arranging my hair. "I have served in the Eastern Palace for 5 years, and I have never seen him treat anyone this way." I blinked at my reflection. The 5-year-old girl in the mirror wore 2 small hair buns and a pink padded jacket, looking like a porcelain doll. This appearance was certainly useful, but I could not hide forever in the Eastern Palace. As a living good luck charm, Noble Consort Liu was still watching from the shadows. The tragedy of my previous life was still advancing along its original path. I had to arrange my pieces before everything happened again. My first opportunity soon arrived. The Empress sent word summoning me to pay my respects at a palace gathering. All the imperial consorts would be present. Be obedient when you go, Your Highness, and do not speak carelessly, Kai Wei warned while straightening my clothes. Most importantly, do not provoke Noble Consort Liu. Hearing the name Noble Consort Liu was like a spark dropping into hot oil. My face remained calm. I nodded dutifully. I understand, Sister Kai Wei. The reception hall was lively that day. The Empress Dowager sat in the seat of honor, with the Empress beside her. Consort de Consort Shen, Noble Consort Liu, and several lower-ranking consorts sat below in order. Each woman had personal maids standing behind her, and every display was more elaborate than the last. The Empress smiled as soon as she saw me. Zhao Zhao is here, come and greet the Empress Dowager. I walked forward on my short legs and followed the etiquette Kai Wei had taught me, kneeling and touching my forehead to the floor in a proper bow. Zhao Zhao greets the Empress Dowager, the Empress and all the honored ladies. The Empress Dowager studied me briefly, then smiled. So this is the child the Empress brought back from outside the palace. She is certainly pleasing to look at. Indeed, the Empress drew me up and held me close. This child and I share a special fate. I liked her the moment I saw her. Before she finished, an unhurried voice sounded from below. It is good that elder sister likes her. But this child came from outside the palace and her origins are unknown. Is it truly appropriate to raise her here? I turned toward the speaker. Noble Consort Liu sat below the Empress in a pomegranate red palace gown. A solid gold phoenix hairpin with a pearl held in its beak adorned her hair. She looked as vivid and splendid as a peony in full bloom. She held a cup of tea and gently pushed the leaves aside with its lid, wearing a proper smile as though she were discussing something insignificant. I knew she was testing the Empress. 3 years earlier, she had orchestrated the destruction of the Shen family. She climbed over my family's remains to become noble consort, and now her position in the harem was second only to the Empress. Her ambitions, however, reached much higher. She wanted the Empress's throne itself, and the Empress was the obstacle she had to remove. What exactly do you mean, Noble Consort Liu? The warmth in the Empress's smile faded. I mean nothing improper. Noble Consort Liu lowered her teacup and touched the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. The palace has strict rules. If everyone brought outsiders inside, would that not create chaos? Besides, has elder sister investigated this child's background? What if she is connected to something unclean? Those words were vicious. In the harem, calling someone unclean was one of the most poisonous accusations possible. Once those words clung to a person, even if she survived, she would still be put through hell. The atmosphere in the hall turned cold. The consorts lowered their gazes, pretending to see and hear nothing. No one wished to draw attention at that moment. The Empress's hand tightened around mine. I could sense her dilemma. She truly had not investigated my past. Finding me on the street and bringing me back had been an act of compassion. Noble Consort Liu had chosen a point that was hard to refute. But I was different. I knew Noble Consort Liu's weakness. Your Highness, I suddenly said. Every gaze shifted toward me. I looked up at Noble Consort Liu with the most innocent expression I could manage and pointed at the phoenix hairpin in her hair. Your hairpin is so beautiful, she paused. She had not expected a 5-year-old child to praise her jewelry at that moment. Some of the caution left her face, replaced by pride. His Majesty gave it to me, she said, lifting her chin slightly. It is a solid gold phoenix hairpin with a pearl held in its beak. No one else in the harem has one like it. Wow. I widened my eyes dramatically. Then I turned toward the Empress. Your Majesty, why are you not wearing one? Did His Majesty not give you anything? The Empress froze before understanding my purpose. Holding back laughter, she replied, He did. I simply did not wear it today. Oh. I stretched out the sound, then turned back to Noble Consort Liu with childlike curiosity. What did His Majesty give the Empress? Was it even bigger than your hairpin? Noble Consort Liu's smile stiffened. The hall went silent for a breath. I continued in a clear little voice, each sentence like a pebble dropped into a still lake. A few days ago at the Eastern Palace, I saw His Majesty send the Empress so many things. There was a coral tree this big. I spread my arms as far as they would go, and luminous pearls this bright. I pointed toward the window. Brother Jingheng said His Majesty treats the Empress best and always gives her the most precious things. After that stream of innocent words, the atmosphere changed completely. Noble Consort Liu's face alternated between livid and pale. She gripped her handkerchief so tightly that it twisted out of shape. The other consorts kept their heads lowered, but the corners of their mouths rose. Everyone knew the Empress was the Emperor's first wife. Though his affection for her had diminished over the years, he had always treated her with respect. No matter how favored Noble Consort Liu became, she could never surpass the Empress in legitimate rank. Words spoken by a 5-year-old child were more effective than any formal rebuttal, because no one could fault a child for speaking innocently. The Empress Dowager burst into laughter, leaning back with delight. What a clever little imp. This child dares to say anything. The Empress laughed as well and pulled me closer. She talks nonsense, she said, but somehow every word is true. Only noble consort Liu could not laugh. She tugged at her handkerchief and forced a smile. Yes, His Majesty naturally treats elder sister extremely well. The smile never reached her eyes. Her gaze settled on me in open scrutiny. She had realized I was no ordinary child. After the gathering, the Empress held my hand all the way back to the central palace, smiling without pause. You are a bold child. She pinched my cheek. You said all of that before an entire room of imperial consorts. Were you not afraid of offending someone? I blinked. Did I say something wrong? The Empress gave me a meaningful look. No, she said. You were entirely correct. After a moment, she sighed. Noble consort Liu has been making move after move lately. I know what she wants, but His Majesty favors her, so I cannot confront her openly. She looked down and smiled at me. Today, however, a little girl helped me vent some of my frustration. I smiled sweetly in return, while my heart remained as calm as still water. In this round, noble consort Liu had merely lost face before the other consorts. It was nowhere near enough to cripple her power, but the first seed had been planted. She had embarrassed herself before the Empress Dowager and revealed weakness before the other consorts. Most importantly, she had begun to pay attention to me. Once her attention shifted toward me, she would become distracted. Distraction created openings. All I had to do was wait for an opening and bring her down in one decisive strike. When I returned to the Eastern Palace, the Crown Prince was waiting in the study. He sat behind his desk holding an open book, though his mind was clearly elsewhere. As soon as I entered, he put the book down and watched me approach. Then he drew me in front of him and examined me from head to toe, as though checking whether any part of me was missing. I heard you had a great deal to say at the gathering today, he said. News traveled quickly. I nodded obediently. Those words you said to noble consort Liu. He paused. Who taught you? My thoughts stirred. His reaction was faster than I expected. Anyone paying close attention would find it strange for a 5-year-old to say exactly what I had said. No one taught me. I shook my head and looked at him with perfect innocence. I only thought her hairpin was pretty, so I asked about it. The Crown Prince did not answer. He watched me for a long time, his gaze so deep that it seemed to search through my eyes for something hidden behind them. Unease crawled over me, but I refused to look away. The moment I did, I would lose. At last, he broke eye contact first. Stay away from noble consort Liu from now on, he said. She is not easy to deal with. I nodded. All right. He paused, then added, if she causes trouble for you, come to me. I will handle it. Something stirred in my heart. When I looked up, he had already lowered his gaze to the book again, as though the promise had been casual. I knew it was not. He never wasted words. That night, Kaiwei quietly told me something while I lay beneath my quilt. Your Highness, she whispered. After you returned from the gathering today, His Highness went to noble consort Liu's residence. I sat up. Why? He said he was going to pay his respects. Kaiwei's expression became complicated. But the servants there say every sentence he spoke was a warning. He said, Commandery Princess Zhaoning is young and does not understand court matters, and that noble consort Liu, being broad-minded and generous, would surely not argue with a child. The noble consort became so angry that she smashed an entire tea set. I lay back and stared at the canopy, then suddenly smiled. Xiao Jingheng, you truly took your duties as an elder brother seriously. I pulled the quilt over my head and wrapped myself into a ball. Something in my heart softened. A grand palace banquet was held for the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was the first major ordeal I faced after entering the palace. 3 days in advance, the Empress ordered a new outfit made for me. A moon-white satin padded jacket embroidered at the collar and cuffs with osmanthus blossoms and jade rabbits, paired with a pomegranate red pleated skirt. Dressed in it, I looked like a tiny immortal who had stepped out of a painting. Our Zhaozhao must behave tonight. The Empress crouched and personally adjusted my collar. There will be many people at the banquet. Stay beside me and do not run around. I understand. I nodded obediently, although another matter occupied my mind. According to my memories, something extremely important was about to happen, or perhaps had already happened, and I simply had not heard the news while living inside the Eastern Palace. That Mid-Autumn Festival, the Northern Garrison General returned to the capital to report on his command. One of his deputy generals was Gu Chongning, a former student of my father. When the Shen family was destroyed in my previous life, Gu Chongning was fighting at the frontier and could not return. By the time he rode thousands of miles back to the capital, he found only a field of lonely graves. Later, he resigned his post and built a hut beside the Shen family burial ground, guarding it for 3 years before disappearing. I had learned all of that from idle conversation between the eunuchs guarding the cold palace. By then, I was already close to death, lying on a freezing floor and listening to them gossip. So someone in this world still remembered the Shen family. I had thought, if Gu Cheng's was still alive, and if he attended tonight's banquet, perhaps I could… Zhao Zhao? The Empress's voice interrupted my thoughts. I came back to myself and lifted my face with a sweet smile. Mother, let us go. The banquet was held in Tai Hall. Lanterns filled the great chamber with light, and wine flowed as the guests exchanged toasts. Civil officials and military commanders occupied opposite sides. The imperial consorts sat behind a beaded curtain, while the princes sat below the emperor in order of seniority. The crown prince occupied the place closest to the throne. He wore a black princely ceremonial robe and a jade crown, looking noble and restrained. He stared without expression at the wine cup before him, as though the noise of the hall had nothing to do with him. The eldest prince beside him presented an entirely different picture. He leaned sideways against the back of his chair, one foot resting on a crossbar, looking thoroughly bored. The moment he saw me enter, his eyes brightened, and he made faces at me across half the hall. The Empress led me to a seat behind the beaded curtain, and I sat quietly at her side. Halfway through the feast, the Emperor raised his cup and praised the soldiers guarding the borders. He then called several commanders by name. Gu Chongning was among them. My heart gave a violent leap. A man rose from the military officers section. He was much younger than the man I remembered. Dressed in military attire, he had broad shoulders and a narrow waist. An old scar ran from his brow toward his cheekbone, but it did nothing to diminish his handsome, heroic features. He lifted a bowl of wine and drained it in one motion with the straightforward ease of a soldier. "Excellent," the Emperor said. "Deputy General Gu, you hold your liquor well." Gu Changning lowered the bowl and was about to sit when his gaze swept casually past the beaded curtain. Then it passed over me. He stopped. For a fraction of a moment, his expression changed. His pupils narrowed, and the fingers holding the wine bowl tightened almost imperceptibly. He was looking at me. No, he was looking at my face. Shen Qingqi at 18 and Shen Zhaozhao at 5 were separated by more than a decade, but the outlines of our features were the same, especially our eyes. My eyes were my mother's eyes. My father had often said that my eyes looked most like hers. And Gu Changning had known my mother. He had certainly known her. I lowered my head at once and pretended to eat, hiding my face while my heart pounded so hard that it seemed ready to leap from my throat. He had noticed. Or at least he had begun to suspect. "What is wrong, Zhao?" the Empress asked, sensing the change in me. "Nothing." I shook my head. "I am a little sleepy." She touched my forehead to make sure I had no fever, then relaxed. I did not dare look up again until the banquet ended. Following the Empress out of Taihei Hall, I let the cool night wind clear my mind. I did not know how much Gu Changning had seen or what he would do next. If he truly became suspicious and began investigating, I might not be able to conceal my identity much longer. But panic would solve nothing. "Your Highness," a voice called from behind. I turned to see Fuan hurrying toward us, breathless. "His Highness sent me to escort your Highness back to the Eastern Palace. He said it is late, and it would be inconvenient for the Empress to make a detour. Your Highness may return in his palanquin." The Empress laughed. "The Crown Prince is certainly protective of you." She patted my shoulder. "Go. Return with Brother Jingheng." Fuan led me to the palanquin. When I lifted the curtain, the Crown Prince was already sitting inside, reading a book by the weak light of a small lamp. Seeing me, he lowered the book and moved aside to make room. The palanquin began to sway forward. I sat beside him, and its gentle motion felt like a large cradle. After the long evening, my 4-year-old body was exhausted. My eyelids began to fall. "Tired?" he asked from above me. I made a faint sound of agreement, already half asleep. Then an arm came around my back and drew me into his chest. His embrace was warm and carried the familiar scent of pine. My heartbeat gradually slowed and sleepiness washed over me. Just before I drifted away, I heard him speak in a voice so low that it sounded like he was talking to himself. "Who are you?" My drowsiness vanished instantly. Every drop of blood in my body seemed to freeze. What had he asked? He was asking me. The palanquin remained silent for a moment. I did not dare open my eyes. I kept the posture of a sleeping child and did not move. Then he pulled the slipping blanket higher over my shoulders. "No matter who you are," he murmured like a sigh, "I promised Mother that I would protect you. You had better not disappoint me." The palanquin stopped outside the Eastern Palace. He lifted me and carried me all the way to my side chamber, then placed me gently on the bed. After he left, I opened my eyes in the darkness, my heart pounding against my ribs. He knew something. Not everything, but he had certainly guessed part of the truth. His question had not been an interrogation. It had been a confirmation, a quiet warning that I could not deceive him completely. Yet he chose not to press me. Was it because he did not care? Or because he cared too much to force the truth from me? I slept badly that night. At dawn, Kaiwei brought me news while arranging my hair. Your Highness, His Highness left before daybreak. It seems he went to meet a commander who recently returned from the frontier. My fingers curled slightly. A commander from the frontier, Gu Huaichuan. The Crown Prince was investigating. I took a deep breath and forced myself to remain calm. Perhaps that was not a bad thing. Only by muddying the water could I tell who was a big fish and who was merely small fry. If Gu Huaichuan could confirm my identity, it might even benefit me. The Shen family still had former subordinates at court. What they lacked was someone capable of gathering them together again. That person could only be me. But the information the Crown Prince found must not reach noble consort Liu first. I had to move quickly. I looked up at Kaiwei with a sweet smile. Sister Kaiwei, may I draw a picture? For several days, the Crown Prince left early and returned late. I did not know how much he had discovered, but his expression told me Gu Huaichuan had revealed a great deal. He began to look at me differently, not merely as a child, but with scrutiny, curiosity, and another complicated emotion I could not understand. I had no intention of waiting passively for him to confront me. In my previous life, I had been far too passive. I waited for others to make decisions, waited for others to protect me, and in the end, I waited for help that never came. This time, I would act first. My first true target was noble consort Liu, because her next conspiracy was about to unfold. In my previous life, she framed the Empress for having an affair with an outside minister. She planted love poems and a personal token in the Empress's bedchamber. The plot unfolded after winter began. The Emperor was furious. Although he did not depose the Empress, he neglected her for more than half a year, and he also grew distant from the Crown Prince. Noble consort Liu's son used the opportunity to cultivate influence at court. That incident had been the decisive turning point in noble consort Liu's rise. In my former life, no one stopped her. This time was different. I knew it would happen. The problem was how a 5-year-old child could expose it. I could not speak directly, because no one would believe me, and I could not simply tell the Crown Prince. I had no explanation for how I knew, so I could only guide him until he discovered the danger himself. One afternoon, while the Crown Prince reviewed memorials in the study, I carried a small stool to the side of his desk, spread out a sheet of fine calligraphy paper, and began drawing with a brush. He glanced at me, but said nothing. I worked with great seriousness. In the upper left corner, I drew a crooked phoenix crown. Beneath it, I drew a pillar to represent the Empress's position. On the right side, I drew a cloud of willow fluff, many tiny dots clustered together, with the character for Liu written clumsily in the center. Finally, I drew a gust of wind blowing from the willow fluff toward the phoenix crown, making it sway as though it might fall. The Crown Prince had been focused on his memorials, but he caught sight of the drawing from the corner of his eye. He paused, put down his vermilion brush, and turned toward me. What are you drawing, Zhao Zhao? This is a phoenix crown, I said innocently, pointing to the upper corner. This is the Empress, I pointed to the pillar. And this is willow fluff, I pointed to the cluster of dots. The wind wants to blow the phoenix crown away. His eyes settled on the paper. He remained silent for so long that I wondered whether he understood. Then he touched the crooked character Liu. Who is this flower supposed to be? He asked calmly. I blinked and pretended to think hard. The prettiest flower in the garden, I said. But she is fierce. She wants to push all the other flowers away. The Crown Prince did not question me further. He looked at me once, folded the drawing, and placed it inside his sleeve. I nodded obediently, releasing a breath inwardly. He had understood. The Crown Prince had not disappointed me. That night, many people came to the Eastern Palace. He summoned his trusted advisors and called in the Empress's trusted eunuchs for questioning. The study lamps burned until dawn as people came and went throughout the night. I lay in my side chamber listening to the movement outside, completely calm. The seed had been planted. The next move belonged to the Crown Prince. Early the following morning, news arrived from the Empress's palace. During the night, someone had attempted to enter the Empress's bedchamber and was captured by the Crown Prince's secret guards. Forged letters and a personal token were found on the intruder. Everything needed to frame the Empress for an illicit relationship with an outside minister. The culprit was caught with the evidence in hand. The Crown Prince took him directly before the Emperor, who ordered an immediate investigation. The trail eventually led to a eunuch from noble consort Lu's residence. Unable to withstand the interrogation and punishment, the man confessed that noble consort Lu had ordered the plot in order to disgrace the empress and undermine her position. Noble consort Liu knelt before the emperor and cried that she had been falsely accused. She insisted she knew nothing, and claimed the eunuch had been bribed by someone else to frame her. The emperor remained partly doubtful, but both testimony and physical evidence pointed toward her. She could not clear herself. In the end, she was confined to her palace for 3 months. Her closest eunuch was executed by flogging, and more than half of her influence within the palace was stripped away. When the news reached the Eastern Palace, I was eating breakfast. Kai Wei rushed in with flushed cheeks. Your Highness, have you heard? Noble consort Lu has been confined. His Highness discovered the plot against the Empress before it could succeed. I took a bite of osmanthus cake and asked in a childish voice, really? Brother Jingheng is amazing. Inside, however, I remained perfectly clear-headed. Noble consort Lu had been weakened, but she had not fallen. That was all right. This was only the first step. There would be a second, and a third until she could never rise again. The crown prince returned that afternoon. He had not slept all night, and faint shadows lay beneath his eyes, but he seemed otherwise alert. When he entered my chamber, I was playing with the small bow the eldest prince had given me. I drew the string and sent cotton-tipped arrows flying all over the room. Have you played enough? He asked from the doorway in his usual cool tone. I lowered the bow and smiled. Brother is back. He walked over and crouched before me. From his sleeve, he removed the drawing I had made the previous day. This picture, he said, looking directly into my eyes. Who taught you to draw it? The question had come, and I had already prepared my answer. No one taught me. I shook my head with an innocent expression. I had a dream. A dream? I nodded and lied smoothly. I dreamed that a fierce flower wanted to blow away the Empress's phoenix crown. I was frightened, so I drew it. The crown prince watched me with a grave, searching gaze, as though weighing how much truth and how much deception lay in my answer. I met his eyes without blinking. Finally, he sighed. If you have another dream, tell me first, he said. Do not put it on paper. After a pause, he added words that made my heart quicken. Things written on paper can be seen by others. He knew. He must have known that I was not an ordinary child, yet he chose this way to protect me. He did not interrogate me or expose me. He simply reminded me to be careful. I lowered my eyes, my nose suddenly stinging. I understand, brother, I whispered. He reached out and rubbed my hair, his gesture unfamiliar and awkward, as though he had never done it before. Good. It was only one word, but coming from him, it felt heavier than anything anyone else could have said, heavy as a promise. That night, I made a decision. If the day came when I could no longer hide my identity, I would tell him myself. For no other reason than that one word. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, I had lived in the palace for 10 full years. The chubby little 4-year-old I had been grew into a girl of 14. Many things happened during that decade. After noble consort Lu's confinement ended, she remained quiet for a while, but soon began plotting again. Every time she acted, I disrupted her plans before they could succeed. Sometimes I drew a picture. Sometimes I spoke a line of childish innocence. Sometimes I did nothing more than send Kai Wei to a certain place, where she happened to meet a certain person, and happened to say something that the right ears overheard. The crown prince saw all of it, yet asked no questions. Each time I acted, he quietly cleaned away every trace behind me. Those who needed to be eliminated were eliminated. Those who needed to be silenced were silenced. And those who could be used were used. Every loose end disappeared. Without realizing it, we developed a perfect understanding. I discovered the danger. He resolved it. We worked like partners who had cooperated for many years. Only one subject remained carefully avoided by both of us. Who was I, and why did I know these things? 2 years earlier, the eldest prince had been made Prince of Qin and moved out of the imperial palace. Yet whenever my birthday arrived, he still traveled great distances to return, bringing piles of strange and interesting gifts. Little sister grows prettier every year, he said during his visit the previous year, staring at me for a long time before turning toward the crown prince. Tell me, whom should she marry in the future? Shall I find a few outstanding young men for her? The crown prince had been drinking tea. At those words, he set the cup on the table. The sound was not loud, but the entire room somehow went silent. Her marriage is none of your concern, he said flatly. The Prince of Qin raised an eyebrow and gave a long, meaningful "oh," but said nothing more. I sat nearby embroidering, pretending not to have heard. In truth, my fingers were trembling, not from fear. Over those 10 years, the Crown Prince's attitude toward me had undergone a subtle change. His original desire to protect a child had become something deeper and far more complicated. She's my younger sister gradually became, she is mine. It took me a long time to understand the difference. Once I did, I could no longer sleep peacefully. The 15th day of the 3rd lunar month, the spring equinox changed my life. The Crown Prince left early that morning to inspect the military camp outside the capital. I expected him to be away for at least 2 or 3 days, so I spent the day reading quietly in my chamber. He returned that afternoon, covered in travel dust. His face looked terrible, and his eyes were threaded with red as though he had not slept for a very long time. "Everyone leave," he ordered. Fuan understood at once and led all the servants out. Soon only the Crown Prince and I remained. He stood in the doorway with the light behind him, making his expression difficult to see, yet I felt a heavy pressure radiating from him. It was not anger, but something more complicated. "Brother, what happened?" I put down my book and stood, instinctively stepping backward. He did not answer. He walked toward me, pulled a stack of yellowed letters from inside his robe, and placed them on the table. The envelope on top bore the Shen family's wax seal. Every drop of blood in my body froze. "Gu Changning spent 10 years searching," the Crown Prince said calmly. "He finally found letters that a servant had secretly pulled from the fire when the Shen estate was confiscated." He touched the stack and fixed his eyes on my face. "These were written by your father. They mentioned that he had a daughter whose childhood name was Zhao Zhao." I stopped breathing. "You entered the palace at 3 years after the Shen family was destroyed. You said both your parents were dead and that you had wandered alone on the streets. You said your name was Zhao Zhao." With each sentence, he advanced until only one step separated us, then looked down at me. "You are Shen Ting's daughter. Your name is Shen Qingcis." It was not a question, it was a declaration. For the first time across 2 lifetimes, I felt genuine fear. Not because my identity had been exposed. I always knew this day would come and had prepared for it. I was afraid because he looked deeply hurt. "Do you know why I went to the military camp?" he asked. I shook my head. "Gu Changning came to me 2 days ago. He gave me this evidence and asked me to decide whether it should be shown to His Majesty. I studied it for an entire night. Then I went to the camp and rode for a full day because I wanted to calm myself." His voice had become hoarse, but I could not calm down. He looked straight into my eyes. "Because you lied to me. You lied to me for 10 years. My tears spilled at once. They were not an act. When he said that I had lied to him, there was no anger in his voice, only hurt, like a child discovering that the thing he treasured most had only been lent to him by someone else. "My name is Shen Qingqi," I said. The voice that emerged was no longer little Zhao Zhao's childish murmur, but the calm, honest voice of a 14-year-old girl. "I am the daughter of the former Chief Grand Secretary Shen Ting. I entered the palace at 16. No, that happened in my previous life." His pupils contracted. "Your previous life?" "Yes." I drew a deep breath. "I do not know whether you will believe me, but I was reborn." Then I told him everything. I began with the destruction of the Shen family. I told him how I entered the palace as an imperial consort, how noble consort Liu poisoned me, and how I awakened again inside my 4-year-old body. I told him about meeting the Empress on the street and following her into the palace, and about the first time I called him brother. I confessed that at first I had intended to use him to take revenge, but over time he had become someone truly important to me. By the end I was sobbed too hard to speak clearly. "I know you do not believe me." I lowered my head and watched my tears strike the floor tiles 1 drop at a time. "I never expected you to, but you asked, and I do not want to lie to you again." A long silence followed. Then he spoke. "You used me. I do not blame you." My body went rigid. I lifted my head. His expression remained cold, but his eyes had softened completely. "But have you ever considered," he continued, stepping closer and taking my chin between his fingers so I had to look at him, "that I never protected you merely because you were alone and had no one to rely on, or because I promised mother?" His thumb gently wiped the tears from my cheek, more tenderly than ever before. "From the moment you first called me brother, I saw that you looked at me without fear. You were not afraid of me, so I could not let you down." He took a deep breath. "Whether you are Shen Qingqi or Shen Zhaoshao, from the moment you first called me brother, you were mine." At that instant, everything inside me collapsed. 10 years of endurance. 10 years of disguise. 10 years of moving carefully along a knife's edge. All of it broke apart at his words. He pulled me into his arms. I buried my face against his chest and breathed in the familiar scent of pine, exactly the same as when he first lifted me 10 years earlier. "Stop crying," he said above my head with a trace of awkward disapproval. "If you continue, I will hand you over to eldest brother." My sob caught in my throat. Then, unable to resist, I wiped both tears and my runny nose against the front of his robe. You would not dare. His chest moved beneath my cheek. He was laughing. The crown prince reported the doubts surrounding the old Shen case to the emperor. Naturally, he concealed the truth of my rebirth. He said only that while investigating noble consort Liu's other crimes, he had unexpectedly found evidence showing serious problems in the treason case against the Shen family. At first, the emperor did not want to reopen it. More than 10 years had passed. The balance of power at court had long since settled, and reopening the case would only stir unrest. Then the crown prince submitted a list. It named every official who had participated in framing the Shen family and identified the true mastermind behind them, noble consort Liu. The emperor read the document and remained silent for an entire night. At dawn the next day, he issued an imperial decree ordering a complete reinvestigation of the Shen case. That winter, heavy snow covered the capital. At last, the Shen family's name was cleared. All descendants of loyal officials who had been implicated were pardoned and restored to office. Noble consort Liu and all her allies were arrested. My father, Shen Ting, was posthumously ennobled as a first-class duke. My mother was posthumously honored as a first-rank, titled lady by imperial decree. As the sole surviving child of the Shen family, I, Shen Qingxi, was personally granted the title Princess Jiaoning by imperial decree, together with an estate of 3,000 households. The decree declared that the young daughter of the Shen family, a descendant of loyal martyrs, had suffered calamity in childhood and endured in silence for more than 10 years, displaying loyalty and courage worthy of commendation. Her family name was restored and she was raised to the rank of imperial princess. I asked that my title remain Jiaoning. It was the title the empress had given me, the first identity I received after entering the palace. I did not want to abandon it. When the empress learned who I truly was, she held me and cried for a long time. I knew it, she said between sobs. The first moment I saw you on the street, I knew you were different. Your eyes seemed to be looking at the people before you, yet also at something very far away. She embraced me tightly. No matter who you are my daughter, I cried in her arms for a very long time. On the day the sentences were carried out, I went to see noble consort Liu. She knelt on the floor of the prison cell, her hair disordered and her clothing soiled, without any trace of her former splendor. When she saw me, she lifted her head and gave a mocking smile. I knew it, she said. I always thought something was wrong with you. How could a 4-year-old child look at people with eyes like that? So you are the surviving wretch of the Shen family. You came to collect your debt. I stood outside the bars and looked down at her. In my previous life, she had stood above me while I lay helpless on the floor. Now our positions were reversed. Noble consort Liu, I said calmly, there is something you told me in my previous life. Today I will return it to you. She stared at me fiercely. Shen Qingxi, do you think being the legitimate daughter of the chief grand secretary makes you special? She snapped, her voice sharpening. Let me tell you, I was the one who brought down your father. You are right, I interrupted. You brought down my father. You also killed me. Her pupils widened, her lips began to tremble and the color drained from her face. What did you say? What do you mean killed you? In your next life, I said, meeting her eyes one last time. Do not cross paths with me again. I turned and walked away. Her shrill screams followed me down the corridor, but I did not look back. The debt from my previous life had finally been settled. From that moment onward, my life belonged to me. After the Shen family was exonerated, the crown prince began behaving strangely. He visited the central palace constantly, always claiming he had come to see the empress. Yet each time he arrived, his eyes searched for me first. The empress understood everything and said nothing. Instead, whenever he appeared, she found an excuse to send me to him. Zhao Zhao, pour tea for Brother Jingheng. Zhao Zhao, Brother Jingheng has returned from the hunting grounds with a fine animal hide. Go see whether you like it. Zhao Zhao, Brother Jingheng seems unwell. Go take his pulse. Take his pulse? In my previous life I had been an imperial consort who had barely opened a medical book. What pulse was I supposed to take? Still I went. He sat in the warm chamber of the central palace. Steam rose from the tea before him, but he had not taken a single sip. Brother, I called. He turned. His gaze rested on my face for a moment before he said, I am not ill. Then why did you come to the central palace? He did not answer. After a brief silence, he stood and went to the window, turning his back to me. There is something I want to discuss with you. I studied his figure. More than 10 years had passed. He was no longer the thin young boy I had first met. The crown prince now had broad shoulders, long legs and a calm, commanding presence. Standing there, he seemed as steady as a mountain. Yet as he spoke, I heard an almost imperceptible nervousness in his voice. Tell me. I walked to his side. He drew a deep breath, turned and looked directly at me. The Shen case has been overturned, your identity has been restored, your position in the palace no longer depends on my protection. I nodded. So, he paused, apparently trying to arrange his words. What do you intend to do now? I blinked. What do you mean? His brows drew together and the tips of his ears reddened faintly. Do you want to leave the palace? Looking at his hesitant expression, I suddenly understood. He was afraid that once my identity was restored, I would leave the palace and leave him. I laughed inwardly. Xiao Jingheng, I never thought I would see you this anxious. Does brother want me to leave, or not want me to leave? I asked, tilting my head. His expression darkened further. I asked what you want, he said coldly. Not what I want. Oh, I nodded. Then I will leave. My identity has been restored, so I can go to Uncle Gu or travel to the frontier and find the Prince of Qin. No. His hand closed around my wrist. You are not allowed to go. He stared at me with a stubborn determination I had never seen before. I have protected you for more than 10 years. You cannot simply decide to leave now. My heartbeat quickened beneath his grip. Then what does brother want? I asked softly. He remained silent for a long time. Then he said the words that left me completely stunned. In the past you called me brother and I protected you in that role for 10 years. He paused, then spoke each word distinctly. From now on, I want to protect you in a different role as your husband. What happened afterward became known throughout the imperial palace. The crown prince proposed before the ancestral tablets of the Shen family. His betrothal gift was a marriage pledge he had written out in his own hand and placed before my ancestors. Lord Shen, he said solemnly. I, Xiao Jingheng, humbly ask for your beloved daughter Shen Qingqi's hand in marriage. In this life I will never betray or fail her. I stood beside him, and my tears fell onto the marriage pledge, blurring the ink. He raised a hand and wiped them away. Stop crying. It was still the same phrase he had used since my childhood, but now his voice carried a helpless smile. If you continue, I will refuse to marry you. I glared at him. You would not dare. He laughed. It was the first time I had seen him smile so freely in front of me. There was no restraint and no princely reserve, only a young man unable to hide his happiness as he looked at the girl he loved. Our wedding shook the entire capital. The crown prince ascended the throne as emperor, and on the same day he formally installed me as empress. He ordered my wedding robes prepared over 3 full months. Golden phoenixes and peonies covered the brilliant red gown, and eastern pearls adorned the phoenix crown. It was the most magnificent attire I had ever seen. Yet my favorite ornament was the jade pendant he personally fastened at my waist. It was the only keepsake his birth mother had left him. My mother left this to me, he said quietly after securing it. She told me to give it to my future wife. He lowered his eyes to mine. I have waited 10 years for this day. I rose onto my toes and kissed his chin lightly. Thank you for waiting for me. That night, red wedding candles burned brightly and filled the room with warm light. He lifted my bridal veil and looked down at me. The flames reflected in his eyes like 2 living sparks. Shen Qingqi, he said, using my full name. Yes, I have a question. What is it? When you first called me brother all those years ago, he leaned closer, his breath brushing my ear. Did you truly want an elder brother, or were you only looking for someone powerful to protect you? I blinked. Guess. His eyes narrowed. You want me to guess? Of course, your majesty is so intelligent. Surely you can. He stopped the rest of the sentence with a kiss. The red candles flickered, and nothing more was said that night. 5 years later, in the imperial garden, a tiny child crouched beside a flower bed. Her plump hand tugged at a peony as she called brightly, "Brother!" The Prince of Qin, who had been walking toward her, stopped in his tracks. His expression became wonderfully complicated. Call me that again. The little girl raised her face, revealing 2 dimples, and repeated in a clear, sweet voice, "Brother!" Before the Prince of Qin could answer, a cold voice interrupted from nearby. Why are you calling him brother? The emperor, just returned from court, strode over, bent down, and lifted the little child into his arms. Call me father, he corrected without expression. The child tilted her head, then turned back toward the Prince of Qin, and called once more, brother. The entire imperial garden fell silent. The Prince of Qin's shoulders shook as he struggled not to laugh. The emperor's face darkened. He looked down at the little girl in his arms, drew a deep breath, and said, You are exactly like your mother. Both of you were born to be the bane of my life. In the distance, I stood beneath the covered walkway and watched them with a gentle smile. By then, I was Empress Shen Qingqi. 11 years earlier, I had called him brother once, and he remembered it for the rest of his life. 11 years later, our daughter called the Prince of Qin brother once, and he became jealous. I looked up at the clouds rolling like open scrolls across the sky. Perhaps heaven had not given me another life merely so I could take revenge. Perhaps it had brought me back so I could meet him.